Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 304, Edwards versus Muhammad 2. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Normally, on these previews, we catch up for a minute, kind of ease into it, but we got 14 fights, and I mean, while there's some so-so stuff on the prelims, there are a lot of fights that are going to require a good bit of analysis. So I'm thinking we should probably get to work here sooner than later. But one thing I do want to throw out there is when the UFC travels, whether it's traveling around the United States or traveling to other countries, traveling to England, traveling to Brazil, China, whatever it may be, they have mixed results as far as booking fighters for the best local appeal. Like, to give the fans someone to come out for and root for that.
Sure.
This one, I don't think the UFC could have done much better. I was thinking about it as I was kind of putting together my notes here. And aside from Ian Gary and Michael Page, who fought fairly recently, obviously wouldn't have been ready for this. I'm trying to think
on this one, which would make
but yeah. Outside of them, who's the best fighter from the UK or Ireland that's not on this card? Like, they emptied the chamber for.
Well, I mean, obviously Connor, but he doesn't count.
He's not an active fighter. Yeah, he doesn't count.
Probably Loughran Murphy.
Yeah, Loughran Murphy would probably be it. And while Loughran Murphy is probably overdue for a title shot, and he's
like, I don't know if he's overdue for a title shot, but
well, Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad are on top of this card, they are the gold standard. But if you're going to leave a really good fighter off, I can understand it, because he is kind of the featherweight Leon Edwards in that you understand why he's been given a miss a few times. Like, not the most exciting fights, not the most sizzling personality. But aside from that, I mean, they've got all the hot prospect names: Muhammad Mokaev, Chris Duncan. They've got the kind of reliable mid-card fringe contender types like Arnold Allen,
Nathaniel Wood.
Nathaniel Wood's another great one. They have
fan favorite Mick Parsons.
Fan favorite Mick Parkin.
Parkin. Sorry, I mixed it up two players: Preston, Parsons, and Mick Parkin. Yeah, I'm mixing up guys' names.
And I'm impressed. At least I don't always give kudos to the UFC when they just engage in sensible matchmaking. Yeah, this one's pretty damn solid.
I have an issue with one matchup. We'll get to that when we get to the fight, because if not, I'll give away my pick. And you know me enough that you'll know exactly which one I'm talking about. I'm sure you probably already do. But other than that,
we'll talk about that when we get there.
You already know which fight I'm talking about. So
I have
yeah, I bet you do.
I have guessed.
Talk about when you say it to me off air.
Yeah. Any general thoughts about this one before we dive right in?
Well, what I'll say about this, I do agree that there's a lot of local appeal, as it should be when you come to England. I think the main card is really good. Like, it's good. Like, they stacked up the main card as good as they could. And then, I mean, especially when they had Mokaev and Cape on the main card, and then they bumped it down the prelims. I think that was a wrong move. But and I think some of the prelims, really good action fights. Some of them make sense. But then, like, the bottom, they just kind of just threw. Then they just was like, it was no longer a pay-per-view, and it was just turned into a fight night. They just threw any people on there. So I think that I'll give this kind of like a C plus, B, maybe a B. I'll give it a B minus. Like, there's some intriguing matchups. So
I'd say I'm good with a B minus, and I do think it is kind of a tale of two cards, because the first 6 fights might as well be a fight night undercard.
Exactly. So again, of course, and I want to say, I know we say this every single time, I'm grading on the curve of a pay-per-view.
Sure.
So if the case is your first time, you're like, what are you talking about? This is a good card. Like, I'm not comparing it to a fight.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, say you cut off the top 2 fights, and this is all of a sudden fight night Green versus Pimblett.
It's
free. That's
great.
Yeah, it's
great.
It's probably an A by free fight night card standards. But yeah, like, I'm with you. Like, are the top 5 fights on this card, are people going to be happy to shell off, their $80? Oh, I mean, we'll see what kind of numbers it does, but I'm with you.
I get you one. Who gets the most attention this week? By the media and stuff.
By the media itself, I think it's going to be the Bobby and Patty show.
Might be Aspinall. My whole point.
If I were there covering it live, like my focus would be on Aspinall.
Yeah, but my whole point is Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad is such a great fight, and it is overshadowed by the fights underneath it.
Yeah, it's very much so. I mean, between the two of them, they have a combined 23 fight unbeaten streak. And the only blemish in the entire thing, 13 fights for Edwards, 10 for Muhammad, is there no contest against each other.
Yeah. No, the UFC, obviously, Bilal Muhammad is not a guy that they really want to become champion. I don't think they have an issue with him becoming champion because like who he beats to get the title, like it kind of is a wash in that sense.
Yeah.
But like that said, like if you went to the UFC and you said, hey, one of your British guys can lose the title tonight, they say, oh, please be Leon Edwards. They don't want Aspinall. They don't want Aspinall to lose it.
No, heck no. Because the thing is,
especially not the Curtis Blades. Yeah,
100%.
It's like A and B. You know,
because Aspinall is a machine of destruction in the cage. I mean, we'll talk about it when we get there, but he has 7 UFC wins and he's only been past the midpoint of the first round once.
If 2 years from now, Tom Aspinall is that face of MMA, would that shock you?
No, not at all. And even while we're kind of seeing what happens there, the fact that he and John Jones are jawing at each other is bringing a little more attention to him.
Somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat. Well, if Blades wins, John Jones isn't going to have anything to say to him.
We'll save that. Yeah, I know. We'll save that for the recap show because
absolutely.
I'm sure if Aspinall wins, we'll have a big John Jones discussion. But Blades could be the spoiler.
He could. We'll talk about it when we get there. Shall we dive into these prelims?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First up on the UFC 304 prelims is a light heavyweight bout between Modestas Bukauskas and Marcin Prachnio. Bukauskas, the 30-year-old Lithuanian but long-time England resident. I mean, he talks like he's British. They're going to root for him like he's British. He is an adoptive son. He is 15-6 overall. He is 3-4 across 2 separate stints in the UFC. He's 2-1 since being signed back most recently. He was signed as the sitting Cage Warriors light heavyweight champ both times. So if he gets cut again, I guess he can go right back and win it a third time. But right now, 2-1 on this most recent run in the UFC. He did lose his last time out, got knocked out in the second round by Vitor Petrino at UFC São Paulo last November. So he'll look to bounce back from that. He'll need to get past Prachnio to do so. Prachnio, 36-year-old Pole by way of the Netherlands. He has lived and trained in Holland forever. He is 17-7 overall. He's 4-5 in the UFC. He is coming in off of a win. He fought at the Hermansson versus Pfeiffer fight night back in February, where he took a unanimous decision over Devin Clark. Odds on this one? There are some wide lines on this card that I won't even bother quizzing you about. I'll just read them off and watch for your reaction, Keith. But here, this one's pretty close. So your favorite is -155, underdog +125. Who are they?
Neither one of these guys should be a favorite over anybody. Somehow they should both be like +300. I have no idea, dude. I go with a local guy then, I guess. But you know what? I'll go with Prachnio because I can say his name easier. No, Bukauskas. How do I say his name?
Bukauskas.
Bukauskas, he had a bunch of fights in the UFC, and I still can't say his name.
Yeah, he even left for a while, so you probably forgot, and then he came back, and you're having to learn it all over again.
I might get a job with the UFC picking the bout orders. I will never take John Anik's spot. That's that for sure.
You are correct though. Bukauskas is your moderate favorite, -155. Prachnio coming back at 125, and you kind of stole the words right out of my mouth. This is, again, there is a certain amount of home country appeal because they will definitely root for Bukauskas the same way they're going to root for Mokaev, even though he's technically Dagestani. But the problem is neither of these guys is super high level, and they're middling light heavyweights in kind of the same way. Like they don't strike exactly alike. Prachnio has that very karate style stance, hands low, kind of side on stance, whereas Bukauskas is much more of a straightforward kind of European style Muay Thai kickboxer, but they both have the same problem. Like, they're big, good sized light heavyweights. In a vacuum, they have all the proper techniques. Like, they look like killers at open workouts, but against actual live bodies in there, they just typically can't make it work. And in some ways, it's for a lot of the same reason. Like, neither of them fights well off the back foot. Bukauskas especially. Bukauskas in particular just looks like he should be a better fighter than he is. He's a big guy, long-limbed. He throws like just beautiful kicks at range, has a nice long jab, but just is terrible when he's put on the back foot. Just not only can't strike well off the back foot, but just reacts poorly to it. Backs right into the fence. Even though he looks like a big dude, seems to lack the physical strength to keep people off and to want to crash the pocket and clinch and kind of muscle them around. Prachnio, offensively, he really can uncork some pretty techniques, but just a little slow. And if you're going to do the Lyoto Machida, Stephen Thompson, Michael Venom Page, like bouncing bladed stance, hands low, that's so dependent on reflexes, and he just doesn't have them. I know Bukauskas is the favorite, but this one feels like a pick'em to me. I think I'm actually going to go with Prachnio here. Like, of the two of them, neither one of them is great when their opponent marches them down. I think Prachnio is probably a harder hitter, and him being more unorthodox, I think he's more likely to surprise Bukauskas with something than vice versa. Like, I feel like Prachnio has fought a lot of Bukauskas types, whereas the reverse is not true. So not a whole lot of confidence in this pick from my side, but give me Prachnio by decision.
Yeah, you said the the problem with these guys, and then you said that not the highest level or that. It reminds me of a girl who plays on my daughter's softball team, and this is just to get the Rhode Island softball fix in. Okay, this is not an insult to this girl. She's a blazing fast base runner, and I always say that she is not a softball player who happens to be fast. She's a track star who just happens to be on a softball team. Like, okay. She's a good softball player. She could be a freaking 50-yard dash. So that's kind of how I feel with these guys. They're like two shuffleboard players who happen to fight MMA or something. I don't know what they're good at. Like, cornhole or some shit. I don't know.
I mean, Prachnio's getting pretty old. He could be a pickleball player. That's
well, what's like a sport they do in England that like us Americans don't even know what the hell.
Darts.
Darts. What's that one?
Cricket.
Yeah, cricket. Yeah, that's who cricket. Yeah, cricket plays. You mentioned Prachnio is this like Taekwondo style striker that is, he's constantly moving, making it hard to kind of time him up. He's trying to like surprise you the way he's going to come in and out. He throws shots with his hands laying low. Not the best hand speed. He throws a lot of single strikes. Like, I go back to like the William Knight fight where he was so much better than him, but he was still like, he threw one strike, exit out, never like challenged himself. I know it was a while ago, but nothing really changed with this guy. But I mean, if he picked up, I keep saying he picked up pace in that fight, he might even got a TKO. But the problem is he might not have, because he doesn't really hit hard. He doesn't have much power. He's more of a point fighter. He has been knocked out himself. His greatest tool is probably his kicks. I mean, he stopped Ike Villanueva with some hard body kicks. He's got some pretty good calf kicks. He can, work in the clinch, and he's not much of an offensive wrestler. But one thing I did like he just beat Devin Clark, and he showed, improved takedown defense against Devin Clark. But then, like, he was easily out wrestled by Felipe Len. So I think it might seem more about Devin Clark at this point than it did about Prachnio. If you put him on his back, he really struggles to get back up. Not a lot of durability. I mean, it's been a while, but he was knocked up like Sam Alvey, Magomed Ankalaev. Give a pass for that, but he's still knocked up by Mike Rodriguez. Bukauskas, and I apologize, I'm going to mess up this guy's name.
You nailed it that time. You said it better than Buffer's going to say it on Saturday.
So, I mean, he's also a distance striker. He fights out of both stances. He wants to keep his distance, and he wants to stay work out from range instead of being pressured. to his credit, he actually is one of the guys who's not too bad at landing strikes as he's backing up. That's because he likes to counter strike. He's got pretty quick hands. The problem is he has a lot of low output. I mean, he almost lost to Tyson Pedro, or I shouldn't say almost lost, but he made a fight against Tyson Pedro much closer than it had to be, just because he simply he refused to throw punches. He does, when he does let his hands go, he throws straight shots on the pipe. He'll throw some spinning attacks. He also has a big kicking game, rips the body with kicks, some nice calf kicks. He's a pretty weak defensive wrestler, but to his credit, he gets taken down so much, he's pretty good at getting back up. And it goes back to his, like, he's beaten two guys that, including his UFC debut where he was defending takedowns, but just against the fence, landing downward elbows. I don't know if that's going to be the case in this fight, but just something to remind. I'm not too sure about his cardio. Like, he's gone 25 minutes on the regional scene, but then he also faded against Zach Puaga, where he was, like, gassing out in that fight. And then also, he was knocked out and cracked by Vito Prachnio, so you got to worry about his chin. I mean, this is a really hard fight to pick because I think both guys are extremely low. I'm looking at the fight records of these guys, and I'm like, one of the mysteries of MMA must be is how did Marcin Prachnio get a win over Khalil Roundtree? Like, and it wasn't like it was a bad robbery. Like, he deserved it. Like, how? As far as this fight, they fight very similar. I know you mentioned like the Taekwondo style of Prachnio, but still, they both want to work from the outside, land some kicks, land some low power punches, and not throw it out. I have no idea. So I'll go with the guy that's 6 years younger. Give me Bukauskas by split decision. Bukauskas, how do I say his name? Bukauskas. I'll take it by split decision. Do you realize that we went from talking about a matchup between John Jones and Tom Aspinall to going right into a matchup with Marcin Prachnio and Modestas Bukauskas? Has there ever been a drop in talent so quickly than that?
That's way up there. It is the best of times. It is the worst of times.
We went with the fight that if you ask MMA fans right now, what would be the number one dream matchup right now? That would be the matchup. And then we're like, all right, so we're done talking about that. Let's go with Marcin Prachnio and some guy named who's fought like 5 times UFC that Keith can't pronounce.
Yeah, and honestly, this is about as bad a fight as there is in the UFC, where neither guy's likely to get cut if they lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now let's go into the TikToker next.
Next up on the UFC 304 prelims is a strawweight matchup between Shauna Bannon and the debuting Alice Ardelean. Bannon, the 30-year-old Irish woman, is 5-1 overall. She's 0-1 in the UFC. She debuted almost exactly a year ago as an then undefeated prospect, dropped her first career loss to Bruna, Brazil, via decision. She's back now a full year later. She had been scheduled to take on Ravena Oliveira. Oliveira withdrew from the card, I think it was basically yesterday, and in comes Ardelean.
Oh, so is that why I keep getting all these notices on the news? Somebody dropped out of a big race. That's the one that's big contest, I should say. A big contest. Someone dropped. Is that what this is about? I keep getting breaking news.
And you know what? It's almost a shame that it isn't like Kamala Harris like stepping in to fight Shauna Bannon. we'll get to that in a sec. Yeah.
Well, she's not gonna get as beat as she will in the general election. Oh, I got it.
Oh. Yeah. So Ravena Oliveira had been scheduled. She dropped out in on basically a week's notice. Steps Ardelean, 32-year-old. She's British by birth, but has basically had her whole career in Romania. 8-5 overall. She is coming in on a 5-fight win streak. She lost to Weili Zhang way back in 2016. Since then, she has 5 straight wins with a huge, almost 4-year layoff in the middle of it over the lowest level competition you could possibly imagine. I mean, the last fighter she beat last August was 0-3 at the time, is now 0-5. But Ardelean gets the call up. She steps in here. When I started putting together my notes at the beginning of the day today, there were no odds yet available. There are now. Bannon is -200, Ardelean +170. And if you are wondering, okay, who is Alice Ardelean and why is she on this card? Why is the UFC signing her? If you Google her, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. She is primarily well known as a TikTok and OnlyFans star. There's a story that went semi-viral about her within the last year or so, where she basically got asked to leave a fight gym because the male fighters' wives were complaining about her being there. That sounds like bunk to me. That sounds like a kind of self-aggrandizing story, but
wow.
At any rate.
Was that Alice Moreno's gym, Ben? You got a confession?
It sure wasn't. Like, she would not be the cutest girl at the gym at Woodlands MMA. Anyway, so yeah, she is a not just a chick that sells like cheesecake pictures on OnlyFans. I mean, like, she's a bit of a personality as well. In fact, in kind of just watching her fights and several of her interviews, she's actually pretty funny, got an interesting personality. But of course, the thing that goes top of the headline is the OnlyFans star. When you Google her, the very first picture is a picture of her ass. That kind of tells you, like, tells you which direction we're going here. But yeah, she's going to get a chance to ply her trade on the biggest stage. And honestly, she is, you would have to go back to when the UFC signed like CM Punk and Mike Jackson to get as mystifying a signing as this, where it's mystifying, not in that you don't know why they signed him. We know exactly why, but just like, wow, is this where we're at? Here's the good news about Ardelean. She's an orthodox striker. She does throw in combination. I mean, it's basically the same combination over and over again. It's a 1-2 with a low kick. Not a whole ton of power or crispness behind it. She's pretty strong in the clinch, you know, like, and ended up there a lot in her fights that I saw. I mean, like, she got ragdolled by Weili Zhang, but everyone gets ragdolled by Weili Zhang. But against the level of competition she had been fighting since the Zhang fight, she has tended to be the stronger woman in her fights. I watched probably half an hour of her fights in preparing for this, and I didn't see many straight punches. As soon as the stuff starts flying, she just, I mean, it was like watching somebody swim rather than fight. Just like, oh, like, you know, this Homer Simpson type punches. I mean, she's just not very good. You know, she's someone who's on a decent win streak just because she's been fighting absolutely terrible competition, and she's gotten a lot of attention for reasons outside of her fights. That's it. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm hating, because I'm not. You know, any way a fighter can supplement their income in legal means, I'm for it. This is probably good news for Bannon, honestly, because the Ravenna Oliveira fight was feeling kind of like a pick'em to me, whereas all of a sudden she's a 2-1 favorite, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't think Bannon is any great shakes either. She's not terribly big for the division, not terribly fast. Like, she's just okay. But I think she'll beat Ardelean. I think it's going to be a matter of Bannon using her footwork, staying on her bike, trying to piece up Ardelean. Because the thing is, Bannon is a good enough boxer that she's going to sniff out Ardelean's like one sloppy combo, and she'll tune her up on the feet. Like, I mean, she probably won't knock her out. She doesn't have a ton of power, but she'll make her look amateurish on the feet if she can avoid Ardelean just bullying straight at her, running her to the fence, and just either mashing her with little short knees to the thigh or dragging her down. I'm going to pick that to happen in at least 2 out of 3 rounds. Give me Bannon by decision, but Ardelean will probably get at least one more shot in the UFC. And she'll be able to put former UFC fighter on her TikTok and OnlyFans forever.
Yeah, Ben, I was hoping you'd continue to break down that fight so I could spend more time on her OnlyFans account. Yeah, she reminds me of, remember that WWF wrestler Rikishi?
Yes.
He liked to put her like his ass in his opponent's face. Like, Bannon better watch out for that move. Like, I don't know if that move's legal. Like, I didn't really know much about this girl, so when I looked her up, the first thing that came up was like her TikTok. She has a TikTok too.
Mm-hmm.
She's got 151,000 followers. She got like almost 3 million likes, and the first thing that comes up is her making bread that happens to also look like ass cheeks twerking. So, that was pretty interesting. So, yeah, she's my favorite fighter in the UFC now.
Like ever since Alexandra Albu was, left the UFC, we've been waiting for the next ass fighter. Like,
oh my lord. Yeah, and then you had Bannon, who, oh my god, so where do I want to go with this fight? So obviously this fight got thrown in last minute, but my research on Ardelean is not too much. Not that my research on Bannon is that much. She was not someone that I was very high on. I mean, she's like a taekwondo type fighter who kind of fights out of both stances. She doesn't move as much as your traditional martial artist. We just talked about like Marcin Prachnio and like him moving. Like Bannon doesn't do that. She has this taekwondo style, but she's very she stays still though. I'd say she's an okay boxer. There's a lot of kicks though. I like the body kick from the southpaw stance. She has a pretty fast high kick. She likes to get to the clinch too and use some Muay Thai plum type clinch. She'll look for some upper body trips inside. Got some. When she's on top, I like her ground and pound. Though she's not a submission threat, she's got pretty good cardio. Like she's going to go hard the entire 15 minutes. I mean, Ardelean, I guess she's famous for TikTok and OnlyFans, and I don't know, having teammates subscribe to her OnlyFans or some shit. To her credit, she's won 5 fights in a row. So, if you took away her TikTok and you took away her OnlyFans, I don't think it would seem like that weird of a sign. You'd be like, wow, she's beat a lot of tomato cans. She hasn't beat anybody good in that run. When you look at people's records and stuff. So
Two of the 5 people she's beaten have 0 career wins.
Yeah,
she's beaten an 0-5 and an 0-4 fighter. Yeah.
So we would be doing like your what's that Astro team when they would like just we might be arguing that, but we wouldn't say like, oh, she's only getting in because of the attention she brought on herself because she likes to show her ass and she's going to twerk at the weigh-ins or she'll be the first, so accidentally drop a towel when she's weighing in over. So, like I don't think it's that bad of a signing because of that. Because we've had signings like this. I just think if you took that stuff away, we wouldn't notice it. Just be like another like kind of head scratch signings.
And worth mentioning that again, it is on 6 days' notice. So whatever the UFC could find to keep Bannon on the card is better than nothing.
Yeah, and like I've been to England. They don't have a lot of good asses out there, so they had to go a little further out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure there's great asses in England. But again, it's hard when you beat up tomato cans. It's hard to know how good you are, but also it's hard to know how bad you are because like we haven't really seen what I have seen her. I mean, then her her last loss was a Weili Zhang, so it's like okay, so I know she's not as good as Weili Zhang. But she fights out of both stances. She lacks power because she throws a lot of arm punches. She attacks with combinations, which I like. She adds kicks into her combos, which I like. She will sneak in a takedown, but she isn't really much of a wrestler. To her credit, she advances position on the ground, and she's got 4 sub wins, so I like that. This fight is hard to pick for 2 reasons. One, I'm not high on either one. Like I wasn't really that big on Bannon either, and it's hard to know what you have with Ardelean due to her fighting bums. So I will go with the fighter that has a full camp. That I think she's got some good kicks and probably be her advantage there on the feet. She'll have to avoid the Rikishi. I don't know if there was like a reversal. Maybe she goes to the Rikishi and you do the small package, old the Killer Bee style or something. I'll go with Bannon by decision.
If Ardelean ends up doing a Mark Hunt style atomic butt drop on Bannon, she's my fighter of the year forever. Yep. She's my fighter of the year every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
We head now to the welterweight division for a clash between Sam Patterson and Kiefer Crosbie. Patterson, the 28-year-old Englishman, is 11-2-1 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He made his debut last March at UFC 286, getting knocked out in like a minute by Janal Ashmoz. Came back in January at UFC 297 and choked out Johan Lainez in the first round. So 2 first-round finishes, 1 each way for him. He's going to look to stay in the win column against Crosbie. 34-year-old Irishman is 10-4 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. Made his debut at UFC 293 last September, getting tapped out late in the first round by Kevin Jousset. Odds here heavily favor Patterson. He is minus 350, Crosbie plus 275. I'm going to steal a line, at least partially steal a line from Keith. I don't know if Sam Patterson should be minus 350 against anybody in the UFC welterweight division. Here's the thing. What I guess Sam Patterson, what he reminds me of, being British, kind of strawberry blonde hair, impossibly tall for his weight class. It reminds me of when Luke Barnett used to be in the UFC. Remember Luke Barnett? He was like the 6'7" light heavyweight. Because he has a bit of the same thing where you can tell that he knows he is a walking matchup problem. He knows he's taller and has reach on everybody, and he does actually try to use it to his advantage, and just can't always quite make it work. It's the same thing as Stefan Struve. Like, Struve knew that he wanted to keep people to distance, but just quicker fighters could get inside and just lamp him with overhands. So far, Patterson has 2 fights in the UFC, and yeah, pretty simple. Yanal Ashmas caught a kick, clocked him with an overhand, and it was over in like a minute. Johan Lainez, man, I believe I picked Lainez with confidence, and then Lainez just shot right into a guillotine, basically. And he ended up getting rear naked choke, but he shot into a front headlock, just playing right into Sam Patterson's hands, like, I guess literally, because it seems pretty easy to crash the pocket against Patterson, and just the one unsafe way to do it is to run like straight into his front headlock with your head lowered. I do slightly favor him against Crosbie, but I don't feel 3.5-1 confident. Just his vulnerabilities are too obvious. And Crosby's another guy that, Crosby's pretty like big and tall and long for the division, nowhere near as tall as Patterson, but he's going to come forward and he's going to be throwing. And I could just easily see him catching Patterson. Like, Patterson is definitely vulnerable to the head. When his guard is up, he's vulnerable to the body. He's a 6'4", 6'5" welterweight. I'm going to go with Patterson because I don't like, I'm not super high on Crosbie either. Give me Patterson to win 2 rounds out of 3 here. Probably have to go through some peril. Like, I could see Crosbie hurting him. But yeah, Patterson by decision, and I think it's just going to be one of those ones that doesn't give a whole ton of confidence in either guy. But I'm going to stick with the favorite here, even though, again, we're not a betting show. But, dude, minus 350 on Patterson is wild.
Yeah, and it's not a betting show because I don't have any money to bet it because I just subscribe to the Last Lady's OnlyFans. So it's like a little less money I have now to spend. As you read me these fights, like I graded this as a B-, and every time you read a fight, like, I think my grade is going down in the minute.
But you knew what this was.
Yeah,
it's great. The top 6 or 7 fights are great.
Holy moly. Kiefer Crosbie, like, he's been the face of like mediocre UK MMA for a while now. He's not a great athlete. He's a kickboxer on the feet. He likes to fight out of both sides of the stances. He likes to get in the pocket and he wants to throw down. He wants to throw and throw a lot of shots and hard. He likes to go to the body. I'd say he has plus power, but he's not as big a hitter as they're going to make him sound like. He tends to fight with a high guard defense. The problem with him in his striking has always been he's very hittable. He makes a mistake of backing straight up the center line. He hates pressure. They go back to like the Charlie Leary fight. He hated all the pressure. He doesn't check leg kicks. He's been hurt a lot. Alex Oliveira beat him up in the clinch. He will go for takedowns, but he isn't a very good wrestler. He's a weak defensive wrestler. He's a weak grappler overall. Go back to the fight against Kevin Jousset. He wasn't good.
But just the ghost of Georgi Karahanyan, wrecked him on the ground. And that was literally Georgi's last win. He never won again after that. And Georgi's a freaking lightweight. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Like the fight against Jusei, they pointed out like he didn't fight the hands at all. Like Jusei took his back and he just like sunk in a rear naked choke. Like looked like a guy who, you know, it looked like a guy that wasn't grappling. Like the instructor's like teaching a move, and he's like, "Oh, then you slide your hand underneath there," and he's just standing there like on all four, like waiting for him to do it. And he's gassed out of the pass, which is an issue. Patterson, obviously, the thing that stands out to me, 6'4", light heavyweight. He's long and lengthy. He's not a very good athlete. He's kind of flat-footed and plodding. On the feet, he sets up shots with feints well. He's got a good jab. I like that he doubles up. He throws straight shots down the pipe, which is good. Though he'll throw some lead uppercuts, which is very scary considering he has major defensive issues. Like he keeps his chin high in the air. Now, obviously, he's a 6'4" lightweight, so his chin is always going to somewhat be high in the air. But he also he has that tall man's Stefan Struve, pulled my head straight back defense. He also throws some kicks, but he throws a lot of naked leg kicks. I'm also worried about his durability. I mean, you talk about that Ash Moose fight. Ash Moose not only just knocked him out, he knocked him dead. I mean, it was like,
oh no, like Patterson kept trying to fight the ref for like a full minute after that. It was scary.
Yeah. It looked like all the moms at Ardelean's last gym trying to get at her. I'm not gonna, guys. I kill a joke. Like I will run a joke into the ground. I got at least 3 more Ardelean references coming up. At least 3.
I mean, not everybody listens to every segment, so you know.
Shame on you, because that's one you should have missed.
Yeah.
He's not a very good wrestler. He's a weak defensive wrestler. If he's more of a grappler, if he ends up on top, he does have some good control. He has a submission. We saw that in his last fight. He's got 6 subs.
Well, of course he has good control from the top. Look how big he is. You'd have to like go to the parking lot to get out from under him. Like,
it's like is it The Incredibles where the person like gets the arms all stretched and shit?
Yeah, like the mom.
Yeah,
The Incredibles.
Yeah, it's like grabbing the mom in The Incredibles. I have a incredible story. I will tell you off the air, Ben. I can. Right. It is not. I can't. I just can't say that. I'd be end of my run with Sure Dog. Anyways, yeah, I gotta like co-sign what you said about Patterson shouldn't be that big a favorite. I mean, he isn't good, especially his striking defense. The problem is, I don't think Crosbie is even low-level UFC talent. So I say Patterson finds a way to get the fight to the ground. I think he subs him. Give me Patterson by first-round submission.
We stay in the welterweight division as we welcome back Oban Elliott and Preston Parsons. Elliott, the 26-year-old Welshman, is 10-2 overall. He's 1-0 since joining the UFC out of Season 7 of Dana White's Contender Series. He made his UFC debut at UFC 298 back in February, where he took a unanimous decision over Valentine Woodburn. He'll look to make it 2 in a row against Parsons. 29-year-old American is 11-4 overall. He is an even 2-2 in the UFC. He's alternated losses and wins in his 4 fights, has fought a pretty high level of competition considering he was signed straight to the UFC, not even out of Tough or Contender Series. I mean, debuted against Daniel Rodriguez. He's fought Trevin Giles, most recently fought Matthew Semmelsberger, took a unanimous decision over him. That was at Fight Night Ankalaev versus Walker 2 back in January. So he's back in the cage after about 6 months, and he is favored to pick up another win here. Parsons is -170, Elliott +140. Keith, I'm going to have you tell these people a little bit about Oban Elliott. All I'm going to say about Elliott is if you took Oban Elliott and Andre Arlovsky and they had a child together, well, 1, that would be a medical miracle. 2, the kid's nose would be perfectly straight. Yeah. I mean, he came to the UFC with a little bit of fanfare. Just he's young. He'd been on a good streak in Cage Warriors. He's got kind of a personality to him. But yeah, I mean, tell me what kind of upside you see in either of these guys and who gets it done.
I'll say this. This is a fun fight. So, yeah, Parsons has been in the UFC for a little bit. And I like that you pointed out that for some reason, he's got a tough road so far in the UFC. I mean, they've matched him against some really good guys. He's a well-rounded fighter. I like Preston Parsons' game. I mean, he's a Muay Thai striker. He fights with a high guard defense. he's pretty technically sound on the feet, accurate, nice snap on his punches, throws a lot of straight shots down the pipe. I like that he works the body well. His left hook to the body is one of his best strikes. I really like that one. He loves like coming inside and shorting up and throwing like lead elbows. Mixes kicks well with his punches. Good kicking game. He's got a great high kick. The problem is he's kind of all offense, and defense is secondary to him. He has some defensive holes. One being he doesn't really like to be pressured. He wants to be the one like working from distance, doesn't want to get pushed back. He also doesn't check leg kicks. When he closes his distance, he works well in the clinch. Nice elbows inside, knees inside. He's mean in there. He's an underrated wrestler. He will shoot without a setup, but I love his last fight. He was shooting, getting sprawled on. He was hitting some peek outs quick, which I love. And if you guys have not, I don't know how to explain a peek out. Mokaev does it too, but basically you shoot and the guy's on top of you where the weight is not centered. And the close way to say it is like they kind of have the hands on the arm and you kick your arm through and you sit out on an angle and they kind of fall down underneath you as you turn behind them. It just, you know what? I didn't explain it well. Just Google. If you really care about that.
DC's head explodes. It's the same as if
mine does too.
Yes, but like it's the same as if in 2008 you did, you like went to rubber guard or threw up an omaplata like Joe Rogan would jump out of his chair. Exactly. Doing kind of high level wrestling control stuff.
Mission control. Yeah. So I didn't explain what a wrestling peek out is that well. So if you're really into that technical stuff, just Google right now wrestling peek out. You'll see what I'm talking about. Where was I? So one thing though, as he's good at scrambles, he can be a little sloppy chasing submissions. When he controls though, like his last fight, I'll give him credit. He had a lot better top control. He's got 9 submission wins. He's got good submission defense. He's been caught in some deep submissions, stays calm, and he showed really good fight IQ against Semelsberg. He knew where his best avenue of victory was able to get there. Elliott, I'll say this. He didn't look that good so far for a guy who has like a lot of personality, something they want. It didn't look really good against pretty low level UFC talent. He likes to fight on both stances. He attacks with combinations. He throws straight shots down the pipe. He's got good kicks, especially to the body. He will throw naked kicks. He has some major issues defensively. He backs straight up. He pulls his head straight back. He doesn't check leg kicks. He's a good wrestler though. Good entries. Sometimes he'll shoot too far without a setup. When he gets the hips, he does cut the corner well if he gets in there. He also has some body lock takedowns if he goes up the body. If he gets down, he goes good ground and pound. I mean, but a lot of that was on the regional scene. Like he had Val Woodburn in dominant positions and couldn't get a finish, which was really kind of disappointing. He has gassed out in the past. I will say this on the Contender Series. He showed incredible heart. He was hurt bad in the second round of his Contender Series fight and looked like he was finished, and he dug deep and won the third round, so that was impressive. And that's something I was like, it kind of wins me over. That said, you said Parsons is the favorite, right?
Yeah, minus 170.
So, okay, so bigger favorite than I expected. I shouldn't say that because I like Parsons here. I felt really good about Parsons' pick. The only avenue for victory I really see Elliott in this one, in my opinion, might be winning a wrestling match. And I think Parsons might be the better wrestler. I think Parsons is better than him everywhere. I think he overwhelms him with volume on the feet. I think he wins the grappling too. Give me Parsons by decision.
Yeah, I like both of these guys because I think Elliott, I don't see top 15 upside in him, but welterweight is still one of the very hardest divisions in the UFC to break into the top 15. But I do see him as a guy with staying power. He'll get a little bit of benefit of the doubt for being young, for being from the UK. His fights generally quite exciting, but Parsons still on the right side of 30 feels like a sneaky bit of the real deal. And I like that you pointed out that he has the full gamut of offensive weapons, but either can't or won't defend himself properly. Like, I don't even know if that's he lacks the skills, but maybe just has the all offense mentality, which is a very welterweight thing. He very much is a throwback to the UFC welterweight division 5 or 6 years ago when you had Santiago Ponzinibbio, Vicente Luque, Randy Brown, Nico Price, just all floating there around the outskirts of the top 15. And it was hard for any of them to put together a real big streak just because they were so freaking aggro, all of them. That feels like Parsons to me. But man, in his first 4 UFC fights, Danny Rodriguez, Evan Elder, Trevin Giles, Matthew Semmelsberger, like none of those are top 10 guys, but they're all top 25 guys probably in the division. That's rough sledding, and he's looked impressive. I'm with you here. I think he'd have to make a mistake, which is possible, or Oban Elliott would really have to thread the needle to win 2 rounds out of 3 against Parsons, because I do think Parsons just is a little better everywhere. Give me Parsons by decision as well, but Elliott has been knocked out, and when he's been knocked out in the past, it's like he's been caught and clocked with something big. It's not like a late in the 3rd round accumulation of damage type thing, but Parsons is the kind of guy that might do that to him. Like if Elliott really is the inferior wrestler, and so he's stuck on the feet and Parsons is tooling him up, or he can't get Parsons off him because Parsons wants to take it to the ground, he's going to be in trouble. And so I wouldn't be shocked by a late finish for Parsons either, but I'm going to take the safe pick here and say that this one goes to decision. We dip to the heavyweight division for a matchup between the undefeated Mick Parkin and Lukasz Brzeski. Parkin, the 28-year-old Englishman, is a perfect 9-0 overall. He's a perfect 3-0 in the UFC. He's already fought this year. He took on Mo Usman at UFC on ESPN, Hebus versus Namajunas back in March, picking up a unanimous decision. He'll look to make it 4 in a row, go 10-0 as a pro, and honestly be knocking on the outskirts of the top 15 against Brzeski. 32-year-old Pole is 9-4-1 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-3 since joining the UFC as a veteran of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He won on the Contender Series. It was overturned because he tested positive for a performance enhancer. He lost the win. It was overturned to a no contest. He kept the contract and went on to lose his first 3 fights in the UFC. He finally turned the corner, sort of, back in April at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Curtis 2, where he took a unanimous decision over Walter Walker. He'll look to make it 2 in a row, inch closer to 500 in the UFC. He is not favored to do so, to say the least. He is plus 200, Parkin minus 250. Here's the problem. I don't think either of these guys is as good as advertised, and one of them isn't advertised as good. Like with Parkin, I feel as though Parkin is getting a little bit of like Great White Hope or Great British Hope, heavyweight hope thing, just because he's under 30. He's a actual big-bodied heavyweight, sure, and he's from the UK. But it's kind of,
in fairness, it's not like Britain has a good heavyweight.
Huh? Well, I mean,
he's in shit.
Like he ate Tom Aspinall. It's kind of
sorry, I stole your joke. Like, I'm sorry.
No, it's like when Brock Lesnar had Chris Tuchscherer training with him, and Tuchscherer had got the same little blonde spiky haircut and everything, and it looked like, hey mom, can we get Brock Lesnar on the way home? No, we already have Brock Lesnar at home.
It was like Al Collins got the same freaking car as OJ.
Yes, there you
go. Mick Al Collins Parkin.
Now, I mean, having said that, Parkin doesn't even aspire to be the same type of fighter as Tom Aspinall. Like Parkin is a boxer.
In fairness, I interviewed Parkin. I'd rather talk to him about the OJ case than fighting.
Lucas.
Just to ask him random questions about OJ.
Yeah. I mean, Parkin, things he's got going for him. I mean, again, he's a true big-bodied heavyweight. No one's looking at Mick Parkin and saying, could he make 205? No, he couldn't make 205. He's a big barrel-chested dude. He's a boxer with, I mean, he's got decent power, but not plus power by the standards of a 6'3", 260-pound boxer. Like, he's got okay power, throws in combination, throws good volume, and has enough cardio to sustain that for 3 rounds. Obviously, since all 3 of his UFC fights have gone to decision. I mean, I feel as though I can already see where Parkin tops out. Like, that could change. He's 28 years old at heavyweight. That means he will be at least plateauing for the next decade, literally, unless he starts getting injured. And he may not have really hit his peak yet, but he's going to be one that beats the bad fighters and will probably string together quite a few wins until he runs into a kind of not even top 10, but like top 7 or 8 heavyweight, because there's the bottom shelf in the UFC heavyweight division, and then there's the top 6 or 7 guys, and in between, it's just a huge plateau. Like I could see him winning like 6 or 7 fights in a row before he runs into like an actual killer, and we see what he's made of. We're not going to find out here. Brzeski, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you see his picture down there. He is the biggest bad Tinder date of UFC fighters since Jake Collier. Like you look at that picture, you see this, what looks like an absolutely chiseled light heavyweight. And that's because he was a chiseled light heavyweight. He's not looking quite the same now. I mean, he weighs in the kind of 235, 240, 245, looking quite soft. I mean, worth noting that on the Contender Series, he won and then he popped for steroids. And that's not the end of the world in and of itself. I mean, most of the greatest heavyweights of all time were around 240 pounds, and most of the greatest heavyweights of all time were not chiseled guys at 240. You know, most of like your Fedor, your Cain Velasquez, your Daniel Cormier types. But Brzeski's he's not. Like I say, he's well-rounded, and that's not a joke on his physique. Like, but I say he's well-rounded, but he's not well-rounded in a sense that he's a 7 out of 10 everywhere. He's like a 4 or 5 out of 10 everywhere. There's just, even by the standards of the UFC heavyweight division, there's nothing he really does at a UFC level. I mean, he beat Walter Walker, Johnny Walker's even bigger brother, but it wasn't a complete robbery. But on MMAdecisions.com, a slight majority of observers thought that Walker should have won that fight. I'm one of them. You were another one of them, Keith. I went and checked your score on it. He should be 0-4 in the UFC, and if he had been, he probably would have been cut, and the UFC would have been looking on OnlyFans to find somebody to lose to Parkin.
Oh, no.
And I don't want to see a 250-pound man's OnlyFans. Here's what's going to happen.
Your thing, huh? You don't have a 250-pound person OnlyFans account?
Well, I mean, we both know that Portia Baines is really a 250-pound man. Like, you know,
I got another story. We'll tell you off air again.
All right. But I mean, here's what's going to happen.
We should have like a what are those where people have to pay extra? They get like a private one.
Oh, like have a Patreon, like have a
like
you have the paywall.
You get all the unedited.
You know what? I'd be open to trying that. We'll talk about it because we'd have to do it real carefully. But what's going to happen in this fight is Parkin is not going to give away a fight that he should win. Because what's good about Parkin is he's going to march forward, he's going to throw punches, and he's going to throw enough punches. Like Brzeski's going to have to do something about it, or he's going to lose rounds. Brzeski doesn't have the physical horsepower to shove Parkin off of him, and if he tries to crash the pocket against Parkin, I think Parkin will ragdoll him. I mean, he's got probably 30 pounds of muscle on him. Like I said, Parkin doesn't have a ton of power, but he has average power for a huge guy. I think he probably gets the finish here, man. Like Waldo Cortez Acosta is, I would say the exact same thing about him that I would about Parkin. Like he has average power for a guy that's as huge as he is, and he throws enough volume. Parkin's probably a slightly better version of that. And Cortez Acosta put Brzeski away with a quickness. I mean, Brzeski can grapple. He'd almost be best served like sliding for a leg lock and seeing if he can surprise them while they're both still dry. Give me Parkin by second round TKO here. I think he probably wins every minute of the fight, just kind of puts it on Brzeski. I can see Brzeski trying to take the fight to the ground and just not being able to get it there. And Parkin ends up just getting an accumulation of damage. Brzeski starts flagging, goes down. Maybe we get one of those, I mean, not Hyder Emil level, but this thing where it's like stopped standing because Brzeski's just slumping against the fence and Parkin's just pouring on the punches.
Yeah, this fight. You did say one thing that was incorrect. You said that Parkin should have 30 pounds of muscle on him. He'll have 30 pounds on him. I don't know if 30 pounds
well, the thing is, Brzeski isn't pure muscle either. I'm kind of like
fair enough.
grading on a curve, but yeah.
McPark is 28, going on 48. The guy has like dad bod all over him. Like he should.
Oh, he's the British Blago Ivanov.
There you go. I like the one mistake that the UFC does with like is the fight kits and all that stuff. Like they should just have guys wear whatever they want. Like Parkin should come out with jean shorts on and like
I was literally gonna say jean shorts,
like white New Balance shoes, like straight dad mode.
So Nike Air Monarchs that he probably also mows the lawn in.
Yeah. Walks out and points at something and goes, "Hey, Buckaroo." You know, or he's walking into the cage. He points at some guy, see the crowd. They're like, they let anybody in this place. You know? Nick Parkin. You know what? Even though he's like a big, burly heavyweight, he actually does move pretty well. Like he's a better athlete than he looks like. He attacks with a lot of volume on the feet, constantly marching down his foe, throws some tight, straight punches down the pipe. He's got a decent jab. You mentioned he has some power, but you know, I'd say he's not a hard hitter for heavyweight, but I mean, obviously he's heavyweight, so he's got some power. One thing I hate about him is that he does like a turtle up defense, which he's got to fix that if he's going to fight the upper echelon of the division. They go back to his contender series fight. He was hurt in that fight because of his poor defense. He looked a lot better his last fight, though the win hasn't aged well because it was against Muhammad Usman. But I like the leg kicks, a lot of calf kicks in that fight with like a new wrinkle to his game. He's a good wrestler, as you mentioned. He'll shoot for some takedowns, though he'll sometimes have no setup. Though he didn't really wrestle Usman, but Usman, he comes from a wrestling background too, so might be a reason why. If he gets on top, he has good control, and when he's been taken out in the past, he gets back up. Now, Brzeski, you mentioned he's a smaller light. Well, he used to be a light heavyweight, right? And then he
he used to be a light heavyweight. Like the picture you're looking at and that profile photo, that's light heavyweight. Yeah.
He's a volume striker who's to his credit, he's constantly moving forward. He kind of has to fight at a high pace because he doesn't have much power for heavyweight. He does have some quick hands, a nice jab. He loves his overhand left. He throws a lot of kicks, especially teep kicks. But a lot of his kicks are naked. He's also very hittable. He keeps his chin high in the air. He doesn't move his head. He will grind in the clinch and will look for takedowns, but he's not a wrestler. He's more like he's a guy who will catch a kick to get the fight to the ground. He does, if he gets the fight to the ground, he does advance position on the ground, move to better, best position on the ground, get some decent ground and pound, but he's a weak defensive wrestler. Struggles to get off the bottom. He also gassed in the past, like to Carl Williams. And then you mentioned it. You got to really worry about his durability. I mean, Waldo Cortez Acosta knocked him out bad. So I'm with you, man. I like Parkin here. I mean, I think what Brzeski's game is going to be volume. Parkin will match his volume. Brzeski has kicks. Now Parkin has kicking game. Parkin hits harder of the two. He's the better wrestler. I think he dominates Brzeski everywhere. Just because Parkin hasn't so far, I mean, I know he's got finishes in his career, but not in the UFC. I think Brzeski makes it to a decision, but I like Parkin to continue his, winning streak and stay undefeated. Be Britain's big hope for heavyweight.
The UFC 304 undercard soldiers on with a bantamweight matchup between Caolan Loughran and late replacement Jake Hadley. Loughran, the 28-year-old Irishman, is 9-1 overall. He's 1-1 in the UFC. He dropped his debut to Taylor Lapalus at UFC Paris last September. That was his first professional loss. He came back and picked up a unanimous decision over Angel Pacheco at UFC on ESPN, Blanchfield versus Fior in March. So he'll look to put that lone career loss further in the rear view. He had been scheduled to take on Ramon Tavares in Manchester. Tavares withdrew from the card. So in steps Jake Hadley, young prospect, habitually a flyweight, but he's going to step up a weight class here. There's no indication that he's staying at bantamweight, but considering that he's coming in off of back-to-back losses at flyweight, maybe he felt like shaking things up couldn't hurt. 27-year-old Birmingham native is 10-3 overall. He's 2-3 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of the Contender Series and as the outgoing Cage Warriors flyweight champ. He as I mentioned, is on a 2-fight losing streak. In his defense, those were unanimous decision losses to Cody Durden and Charles Johnson, both of whom are borderline ranked fighters in that division. He'll look to snap that streak, maybe get a new lease on life in a new division against Loughran. He is not favored to do so. Loughran is minus 200, Hadley plus 160 on the comeback. Keith, obviously, Jake Hadley arrived in the UFC as an undefeated prospect. He didn't have the same sizzle or the same ceiling as Muhammad Mokaev, who came in right around the same time, but he also had the 0 in the L column. He's had mixed results ever since, but his 3 losses, Alan Nascimento, Cody Durden, Charles Johnson, there's nothing to be ashamed of there. How do you feel about the 27-year-old Brit, and how do you feel this fight goes against Loughran?
Yeah, it's such a mystery moving up a weight. That's obviously the big concern. I mean, but like you mentioned, his back's against the wall, but also like the Charles Johnson loss has aged well. So Hadley, I'll say this: he's even in his losses, he's fun. Like he's a fun guy to watch. He's a very talented guy. He's a southpaw that he fights with a lot of pressure, constantly marching down his foe, constantly taking ground while cutting off the cage on his opponent, trapping them. Great volume. Good kicking game. He throws a nice crisp jab, good variety in striking, constantly mixing up high, low, works the body super well. It's a big part of his game. He'll come inside and rip, like if you throw up a high guard defense, he'll rip 3 or 4 hooks in a row to the body. Defensively, he has this like weird pillaring thing where he peeks his right arm across his body. It's a little bit of like a MMA version of like a Philly shell, but not necessarily. He also does it because he like tries to. I think he's trying to hurt people kicking, like trying to catch the kicks on his elbow, which I don't know if that's the best strategy. More likely going to break your elbow, but it also opens him up to body shots himself. He backs straight up when he's pressured, though he's often not the guy backing up. I like his kick in the game. He really turns over his hips, so he has really quick kicks, especially to the body. He can sneak in a takedown, and he's a good overall grappler. He's got good top control. He moves really well on the ground, moves to better positions. But his takedown defense is not the best because he's so aggressive that he kind of walks into people's entries. Like they don't have to be the best entries. Charles Johnson being one of them. Mm-hmm. Cody Durden another one. He's very flexible though. He's got a good submission game, chain subs together. I go back to when he fought Mitch Raposa. He hit Raposa with a go-go plata, but he does struggle to get off the bottom. He was go back to the Nascimento fight. He was pinned against the canvas for long periods of that fight and kind of plays jiu-jitsu a little too much. Loughran's not he's a guy that came into the UFC with a lot of hype for the European scene too. So these are 2 guys who came in with a lot of hype. Hadley, I saw it a little bit. I didn't really see. I never got the hype on Loughran that much. He's not a great athlete. He's short and stocky kind of guy. Like he's definitely physically strong. I mean, the guy's a ripped, muscular guy, but he's not very technical on the feet. He does fight with a lot of pressure though. He marches down his opponent. He works behind a jab. But he works because he wants to get inside and get to the pocket. He wants to throw down, throw hard hooks. In the last fight, he was wrapping his overhand right around his opponent's jab, which I like that. He's got some nice power, though he will pull his punches. I actually think he could be a bigger power puncher than he is. He throws a lot of kicks. Problem is he has a lot of defensive issues. And I know I say like broke a record. I think about pretty hard on a lot of guys when it comes to defense. He lacks head movement. He keeps his chin on the air. He's very hittable. He will wrestle. And I know a lot of Europeans, people in his UFC debut, when I said that I don't view him as a wrestler, and like a lot of Europeans got upset for me saying this. I think his wrestling's grossly overrated. I don't think he's that good. But to his credit, his takedown defense is pretty good. But his overall offensive wrestling, no. If they were the same weight, I would feel really good about Hadley. I wouldn't say really good, but I would feel much better. Like pound for pound, I think Hadley's the better fighter, the more skilled fighter. Though he's the weaker wrestler, and I wonder if his pace slows down because he's taking the fight on short notice. Now, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe he's not cutting that much weight. He got even more output. Maybe it's just a test to see how that is. I think it probably has more to do that he wants to fight at home in his home country, in front of family and stuff. But worry about the pace plus giving up the size, being the worst wrestler. Is that going to hamper him? This is probably against my worst judgment. We had a nice run of taking underdogs last week. It's short notice, undersized. I'm going to say Hadley's pressure gets to Loughran. I think his footwork, I think his speed, his kicks, his body work. He's going to have to stuff some takedowns, be the one pressing forward. Maybe he doesn't have the power to back him up. But I'm going to go with Hadley. I would say he's going to be enough of a threat on the ground to create some scrambles, get back to his feet. And I think he wins the striking battle. Give me Hadley by decision.
Yeah, I like the pick there because if Hadley's gonna test the waters at 135, whether it's just because this is a short notice opportunity or because he decides, okay, maybe my best future is there, you couldn't ask for a much better first opponent than Loughran, who is actually going to be shorter than him. And I don't know like what the reach will be, but Loughran is one of those guys that fights in such a way that makes his reach seem even shorter. He's just a short, compact guy that keeps things in like nice and tight. So at least Hadley won't just be walking in there against like another Charles Johnson type and just going, oh, okay, this division is definitely not for me. I agree with you that he's probably more skilled than Loughran. It's tempting to go with you here and take the upset, but Loughran being the one that's on the full camp. And, I do wonder kind of where Hadley's head is at. I mean, again, this guy just a couple years ago was undefeated, and he had that confident sheen of a guy that had not tasted defeat as a pro, and all of a sudden he's on back-to-back, losses. I wonder how he'll react to adversity if things don't go his way against Loughran. Just of all the kind of question marks floating around in the air, not enough of them favor Hadley for me to be comfortable taking the upset. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. I think it's a solid pick on your part. I'm going to go with Loughran here to get his second win in a row. Give me Loughran by decision, but maybe we'll see something out of Hadley, win or lose, that makes us realize that his best future does lie in this division. Next up at Manchester this Saturday is a strawweight clash between Molly McCann and Bruna Brasil. McCann, the 34-year-old from Liverpool, is 14-6 overall. She is 7-5 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Cage Warriors flyweight champ. 7-5 in the UFC, 1-0 since dropping to strawweight. She did most of her work at flyweight, became kind of a sneaky big celebrity in the UFC back in 2022. But after back-to-back submission losses to Erin Blanchfield and Julia Stoliarenko, she decided to drop to 115 pounds. She made her debut in her new division at UFC Fight Night Dolidze versus Imavov back in February, where she tapped out Diana Belbitsa with a first-round buzzer-beating armbar. She'll look to make it 2 in a row against Brazil. 30-year-old Brazilian is 9-4-1 overall. She's 1-2 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. She fought most recently in February at UFC Fight Night Hermanson versus Pfeiffer, where she dropped a unanimous decision to Loma Lookboonmee. Odds here, the woman that is likely to get at no worse than the third, if not maybe the second best, biggest pop on the entire card, despite being on the prelims, is a massive favorite. She is minus 325, Brazil plus 235 coming back. Keith, I'm going to guess that this is the fight that you were a bit mystified by the matchmaking and the placement, considering that you are very firmly on record as saying, why would you do anything with Molly McCann other than put her on main cards in the UK against overmatched foes? You're muted.
Oh, sorry, this isn't the matchup, but yeah, I still.
This isn't the. No,
okay, I would just keep giving her like tomato cans. Bruna Brasil, I don't think is a tomato can, but no. like the girl that OnlyFans Ardelean beat in the last fight. Sign that girl just to get beat up by Molly McCann.
Yeah, she's 0-5 now. Like, you'd have to book it someplace that like doesn't have an athletic commission. But
Dan Hardy could got it done for Bellator or PFL. So what?
I'm good with anything that gets Molly McCann more time in the UFC. Like you and I think even most of her fans are realistic about, okay, Molly McCann is not a future champ at 125, 135, or 115. She's someone who's going to have some fun fights, some occasional highlights. I mean, she did ice women with back-to-back spinning back elbows in 2022, and is going to be an absolute delight on the mic. And if you can get her on the same card as Paddy Pimblett, he'll carry her around the cage, or she'll carry him around the cage, which is even funnier if they both win. Like that's Molly McCann. I don't think she was best served by moving down to 115 pounds, because none of the things that were having her lose fights at 125 were because she was undersized. Like, in fact, I would say her biggest shortcoming as a fighter is that she's kind of slow and plodding, and you know, her biggest upside is kind of her durability and volume. Both of those things are muted by moving down to 115 pounds. She has a deeper weight cut, and she's fighting faster women. I mean, for somebody that presents as a boxer, like, you know, Meatball Molly and the whole vibe she gave off early in her career, just, she wanted to give off the vibe of the just prototypical British kind of slugger. She's always had a sneaky good offensive ground game. The problems with her defensive ground game have been laid bare at this point. I mean, Blanchfield wiped the floor with her, but that was to be expected. Erin Blanchfield's an incredible ground fighter. Yulia Stoliarenko is as big of a one-trick pony as there is in the UFC, and she managed to do that one trick on McCann. Like, Stoliarenko is literally a one-round armbar specialist, and she armbarred McCann in the first round. That's a problem, and that's not really a problem that's going to be solved by McCann moving down to, you know, 115. Like, in her debut at 115 pounds, she fought Diana Belbitsa, who's a fellow former flyweight, and Belbitsa is a terrible grappler, and McCann took advantage of her. Here against Brasil, this feels more to me like McCann's fights during her win streak, like, you know, the Gian Kim and Luana Carolina fights, where she's going to be fighting a woman that's probably taller, rangier, skinnier, and is going to want to fight an out kickboxing match against her. And the question to me is she going to be able to get the fight into her preferred range? You know, McCann is willing to throw kicks as well as punches, but she's at her best when she's coming forward, getting into the pocket, throwing punches in combination. She doesn't have a ton of power, but, you know, her flurries of punches do accumulate damage, and they do win rounds. Like, if she's marching forward and throwing flurries of punches, even if, you know, half or 2/3 of them are, you know, bouncing off the guard, that's the kind of thing that is going to sway judges. I'm not comfortable with her at -325 against Brasil, but I do favor her in this one. This just strikes me as the kind of fight where she's going to march forward. Brazil's not going to be able to keep her on the outside, keep her at range. That's been a problem for Brazil. Like, Denise Gomez just crashed the pocket and, like, you know, either like mugged her with punches inside, or just basically flung her around. Just shorter, stronger woman. Loma Lookboonmee, you know, obviously a decorated Muay Thai striker. Brasil, a decorated Muay Thai striker as well, but Loma was equally comfortable with an outfight or an infight in Muay Thai, whereas Brasil primarily wanted the outfight, and she couldn't get it. That all points to me to Molly McCann probably winning a decision here. I mean, it'd be great if she peeled off a spinning back elbow. I guarantee you she's going to try it at least once. Let's be realistic. She's going to try it at least twice. I don't think she's going to land it. That seems like the outside chance, but the main chance to me is that McCann just grinds her out on the feet or decides to take her to the ground. I think McCann will be able to take her down if she wants to. And again, McCann, a much better offensive than defensive grappler, could park in top position, do some damage with ground and pound, and maybe even threaten with a submission. So give me McCann to win a fight here. It may not be the most riveting fight, but the arena is going to come unglued like they just watched Prochazka versus Teixeira or something. And half of the combination we need in order to have some serious hijinks in the arena will be completed.
Yeah. I like Marley McCann. I love
Of
her.
course.
I mean, she's such a gimmick. It's so much fun. And shame on the UFC for like not extending her out. I mean, I guess all good things come to an end, but she just reminds me of like when the most obscure things in life become popular, where everyone knows like there's no reason why this should be popular. Like I think of like Ozzy Osbourne and his family became popular for a while, and
Yeah.
like that's how I feel.
She's the Who Let the Dogs Out of fighters. There's some band from the Caribbean that had actually been around for like 15 years, but the Seattle Mariners like PA guy started playing their song, and all of a sudden they were the biggest hit of that year. Yeah,
that's it. The Macarena people.
Yeah, like the Macarena people. There were two dudes in their 60s. Yeah,
what's like a British like band that had like a one hit? Because you tell me British bands, I just think of like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. Like I think the Mega. Like what's a like obscure like British one? Come on, you're supposed to be the music guy.
Yeah, but you put me on the spot, and like I completely embarrassed myself.
I'll talk, and you can think of something. That's Molly McCann. So I'll say this about Molly: like she doesn't look like her. She's actually a pretty decent athlete. I mean, she constantly switches back and forth from both stances. I've said it before. All her movement is a little like Clay Guida thing, like prime Clay Guida thing, where he's moving all the stuff, just kind of make it difficult for her opponent to pick up her timing. She likes to get in and land and then get out before being countered. She's got good output. She's got pretty quick hands. She has decent pop. That's when she gets in, then she'll sit on a punch and throw a big combination. She loves spinning attacks, as you mentioned. Like, I mean, she had back-to-back one. I mean, it was fun as hell. Like, like on top of this, the Molly McCann, like, rise where the guy from, what's that show? Barstool what's his name? David Portnoy was like her biggest fan. I think it was also not that she was just winning and is in a patty thing, but winning with spinning back, fist and elbows and all this. Yeah, it's like how fantastic! What a run that was. She's still like she struggles with people who are better athletes than her. Like Talia Santos destroyed her with kicks. She likes, besides being all the way out, if she's all the way out, she wants to be all the way in. She likes to get in close, battle in the clinch. She's got a mean streak in there, some dirty boxing. She'll actually, she's not a strong grappler, but she'll sneak in the takedown. But the problem is she's a weak defensive wrestling. I mean, everybody takes her down. She's got weak sub defense, but she's got good cardio. She's got to work hard the entire 15 minutes. Bruna Brazil's a good athlete. She's explosive. She's got some good kickboxing. Her last fight was concerning, though. She had really low output against Loma Lambume. What was her last fight, right? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Brazil's last fight was Loma, yeah.
Yeah. She sets up her shots well with feints. She also loves spinning attacks. It'd be fun if that's what we should have. Let's just have them both like spin like two tops and see who's the last one standing.
All spinning stuff like that.
Not stop. She's got a good kicking game. She landed an incredible high kick on the Contender Series. I've been going on about people having defensive issues. She's the ultimate one. She keeps her hands wide by her side, like it's wide and low. Which I hate. She keeps her chin high in the air. I mean, go back to the Denise Gomez. Denise Gomez was hurting her with every single punch she threw. I mean, she couldn't block the right hook at all. Like she just was getting hit with the same right hook because she was keeping her left hand low by her hip. Also, like going back to Loma fight, one of the notes I wrote on her is plan A isn't working. She doesn't have a plan B. Like she just keeps trying the same thing over and over again. It's like she doesn't know. Like okay, well, I'm trying to press the action, but I'm walking this shot. She doesn't start going. Okay, I'm going to clinch down. Or I'm going to wrestle, or I'm going to kick more. Like she doesn't. Now she can. If her game plan is to wrestle, she can sneak in a takedown, and she actually likes some throws inside the clinch. But she's a weak defensive wrestler herself. To her credit, she did hit a sweep in the Contender Series, and she has two wins. I think the odds are way off. I actually think it's hard to pick, and I love Molly's personality. I mean, she's so much fun. I've met her in person a couple of times, talked to her privately. She's a super cool chick. I'm just talent-wise, I'm not that high on either. Like I said, I think it'd be more exciting for Molly to beat up Tomato Can to get the crowd excited. Brazil isn't good. She isn't great. She's a good athlete, but she isn't great. But she isn't a can either. It's just because of how good an athlete is. If she could clean up her defense, I think she'd win this fight. And I have flip-flopped a little bit because I think the line is way off. The thing is, I don't know about Brazil because I see like offensively some really like things that could make a difference. But they were in England. I'm going to go with McCann. I'm going to say she excites the crowd. She's seen someone that like builds off the crowd. I say she lands something really big. Give me McCann to knock her out in the second round. But I want to be very clear. I have zero confidence in this pick. But let's go with Molly McCann.
Second from the top on the UFC 304 undercard is a featherweight matchup between Nathaniel Wood and Daniel Pineda. Wood, the 30-year-old Englishman, is 19-6 overall. He is 7-3 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Cage Warriors bantamweight champ. He started at bantamweight in the UFC. He moved up to featherweight for good a couple of years ago. He's 2-1 since moving up to featherweight. He did lose his last time out. It was back in October at UFC 294, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Muhammadjan Naimov. So he'll be looking to get back in the win column here. In order to do so, he will need to get past Pineda. Pineda, 38-year-old Houstonian, is 28-15 with 3 no contests overall. He is 5-6 with 1 no contest in the UFC across multiple stints with the promotion. Since being back most recently, he's 2-2 with 1 no contest. He did lose his last time out, dropped a unanimous decision to Alex Caceres at UFC on ESPN, Cara France versus Albazi last June. He had been scheduled to fight back in October or November against Hussein Ashkabov. Then Ashkabov went on to become, allegedly, one of the worst people ever to pass through MMA. So that fell off. Pineda had a few other things going on. He doesn't make it back into the cage until this weekend, where he has an uphill battle as he is the biggest underdog on the card. Wood is a whopping minus 550. Pineda plus 400 on the comeback. All right, well,
550?
Minus 550. Here's
I knew
the problem.
Favorite, but holy shit, 550.
There is a time, and the time is not that long ago. There's a time within the last 3 or 4 years where this would have had biggest upset of the year in the UFC written all over it. It could have been the Pineda versus Herbert Burns fight all over again, just because Pineda is such a venomous finisher. I mean, we're talking about a guy with 28 career wins and a 100% finishing rate. That's got to be the best in the UFC, one of the best in a high-level MMA period. 28 wins, no decisions, and not quite an equal opportunity distributor. Like, he gets more subs than knockouts, but he's a guy that even in his prime, he wasn't a super plus athlete. But, I mean, at this point, he's pushing 40. He has going on 50 career fights. Not to put too fine a point on this, he's popped multiple times for performance-enhancing substances, all things that don't portend aging gracefully. And this is already a division where it's no country for old men, as it were. I like Pineda. My biases and my support for Houston area fighters is well known. I make no secret about it. And Pineda's an OG. I mean, he was one of the primary fighters from 4 Ounce Fight Club, which is Houston's OG gym. He's now the head coach at 4 Ounce Fight Club, where he's managing people like Josh Van. He's definitely in the part of his career where he's probably transitioning on to the next thing. And Pineda's whole thing of like losing a fight, taking some damage, and just waiting for his opponent to either get tired or make a mistake, like, that's the kind of thing he could have sprung on a Nathaniel Wood just a couple of years ago. I would have a hard time picking it now. Wood is, I mean, it's kind of funny that he's his nickname is the prospect, because even though he's just 30, he feels older. He's been in the promotion for a good long while now. He had kind of a gritty veteran vibe to him, even when he was like 25 years old. He's that type of British fighter. He's not a super plus athlete either. I'm glad he's moved up to 145. I do think it's better suited to him. I mean, he's not ridiculously undersized for 145, and I feel as though like his speed is better against against featherweights. He's a solid striker. He's not a great wrestler, but he's in that category. He's a good British wrestler. You know, like if this were 15 years ago and he was 30 years old, he like the best British wrestler in MMA. But you know, he's a solid wrestler that actually knows some entries and, you know, knows what to do on the second effort if someone, you know, sprawls on your double. Decent defensive wrestler, though. I mean, he gets caught by opportunistic stuff sometimes when he's coming forward too aggressively on the feet. As again, a guy that's a Houston guy and an unabashed Houston booster, I feel like this is going to be a pretty depressing fight for me, because I expect Wood to win all 3 rounds. And just at the moments in the fight where vintage Daniel Pineda would have snatched a guillotine or just jacked a man's jaw with an uppercut out of nowhere, he's just not going to quite have the gas for it. Give me Wood to win a pretty one-sided decision here, and maybe you know, I don't know if Pineda retires in the cage or not, but he's got to be in that kind of phase of things by now. But yeah, give me Wood as the minus 550 favorite to cash.
Man, your chance to back your city and go that big of an underdog.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt and throw out one thing here. This is the best thing I can say about Daniel Pineda. If every MMA fighter within 50 miles of Houston was at a Waffle House one night, I'm there, and a chair goes flying across the room, forget Derek Lewis, forget Trevin Giles, forget my guy, my teacher, Alex Morono. I'm looking for Daniel Pineda's table and hiding behind him, and he's a 5'7", 745-pound guy.
I don't know.
I would have run from that man in a street fight.
I might hide behind Derek Lewis. I understand he's tough, but just to pure like trying to deflect things, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nobody would see you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I just get by Derek Lewis. What's the chances Derek Lewis is at a Waffle House right now?
If the Popeyes is closed?
I don't know, man. He's in Texas. He could be at Buc-ee's right now having a nice friggin' pulled pork sandwich.
Yep. Get a couple bags of beef jerky for the drive.
Yeah, get a couple beef jerky. Buy some tile.
Buy a framed painting hanging outside the bathroom.
And a tent on the way out. Anyways, if you've never experienced Buc-ee's, what a place. This is that action fight. Like, this is like one of the prelims that you know it's not going to be boring. Neither guys are boring. Nathaniel Wood, obviously, he's a little undersized as he used to be a bantamweight, but he's a good striker. Very composed, very accurate. I like that he likes to lead with his power punches, with his little unorthodox. He likes to avoid shots with shoulder rolls, which, you know, I'm not a big fan of. That's just because he has a very boxing heavy style. He gets hit more than I like. I mean, he's been rocked in back-to-back fights. In some of the fights he's won, he's been hurt. He throws a lot of teep kicks up the middle. I mean, go back to like the Charles Rosa fight. I mean, that's not a fight that really aged well, but he murdered him with calf kicks. He combines punches and kicks well in the pocket. He's a very underrated wrestler. He loves body locks and trips. He will shoot through the hips from distance. You know, not his go-to. He's more likely to use his size with him, but he will shoot on the hips. He's a good grappler. He's a submission artist. He has 6 subs. Daniel Pineda, I mean, he had this little late career surge until Alex Caceres gave him a thrashing, but it was one of my favorite things going in MMA. He is a great athlete. He's if he wins, I want him to win by finish. Like, I'd rather have him lose than win a decision, because the dude, you talking about he might retire. One of the craziest stats that this guy has a 100% finish rate, you know, and he's got
28 career wins.
28 career wins. That is an all-time like stat. He's explosive. He's a brawler. He wants to get in the pocket. He wants to throw hands. He's got fast hands. He looked particularly fast in that Tucker Lutz fight. That was one of the best performances of his career. His hands were fast. He has nice power. He's got 9 TKOs. Dude's, I mean, you talk about toughness. Like, you talk about Waffle House. I mean, Texas got some freaking waffles. I mean, they got some pancakes. I mean, you guys hit some big shots there in Texas. But this guy won't stop. I mean, he was getting butchered by Alex Caceres, and he made it a fun fight because he was outclassed and he never stopped. He is an underrated wrestler. He does some fast entries. He's good at winning scrambles. He's got a good top game, nice ground and pound. You talk about his grappling. It's always been, he's a super slick grappler. I mean, he's a submission artist. He's got 19 subs. You mentioned a guillotine. It's a bit of a specialty. I wouldn't be surprised if he caught Nathaniel Wood because he's a pretty damn good grappler himself. But I mean, this dude out grappled Herbert Burns, which is a pretty good in a Herbert Burns style fight, which is a huge accomplishment. Dude, this is nuts. The betting line is nuts. I've actually flip-flopped on this one. Like, I give Daniel Pineda a much better shot than you do. I think I flip-flop because I like these guys so much, both of them. I think both guys are super underrated. I wasn't even that sure who I was picking before you throw out the betting line. I'll tell you right now, I don't think Elliott Taporia should be a negative 550 favorite against Daniel Pineda. No, just because, like, yeah, there's guys who are that much more skilled, but because of his finishability, he can always come back on anybody. Like, he's that guy. You give him one opening. I was on the fence. Fuck it, dude. I'm going to say Pineda's pressure and power get to Wood. I think they both have their moments. Wood's got hurt in back-to-back fights. I mean, Andre Feely hurt him bad. I say we get a hectic war. I say Pineda lands a big shot once he does the leg. Give me Pineda my third round TKO in a massive upset.
I absolutely love it. If you are right and I am wrong, I will have to move out of Houston. So, get a guest room ready.
What you're gonna do? What you're gonna have to do if you're that wrong, you gotta go to Buc-ee's and get me a nice pulled pork sandwich. Get that shit wrapped up and send it to me.
All right, you got it, man. Next up at UFC 304, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the top prelim is a men's flyweight contest between undefeated phenom Muhammad Mokaev and Manel Kape. Mokaev, the 23-year-old Dagestani-born, longtime Manchester area native, is 12-0 with 1 no contest overall. He is 6-0 in the UFC. He fought once already this year. He took a unanimous decision over Alex Perez at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Gaziev in March. He'll look to make it 7 in a row, recertify himself one of the most promising up-and-comers in the entire promotion against Kape, about whom the same thing could have been said just a couple years ago. 30-year-old Angolan by way of Thailand is 19-6 overall. He is 4-2 since joining the UFC as the former Ryzen flyweight champ. He's on a 4-fight win streak. That's the good news. The bad news is that those 4 fights date all the way back almost 3 full years. He fought most recently at UFC 293 last September, where he beat Felipe dos Santos by unanimous decision. He steps in here looking to make it 5 in a row, looking to kind of redeem the hype around him that had people seeing him as an immediate title contender in that division. He is not favored to do so, but the line is pretty tight. Mokaev is minus 130, Kape plus 110. Keith, I feel as though I was going to say we, but I don't necessarily mean we like you and me or we, the fan base collectively. At least I have had the wrong read on Kape a couple of times.
That was fantastic. You're like, I mean we, but really just I.
It's really just I.
What you meant is you didn't mean we at all.
Yeah, I really.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, I shouldn't dress it up. I have.
I mean the complete opposite of we.
Yeah, the complete. When Kape signed with the UFC at the end of 2019, I was as excited for that acquisition as
You mean we were?
Yeah, but it's fair to say that anybody who was in the know was stoked for Kape to join the UFC.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he was
a stud.
Yeah, he was a stud, and he's champion Ryzen. That was probably the second best flyweight division in the whole sport at the time, and he was a great fighter and also just a monster finisher. He seemed to be, he seemed to have all the tools to become an immediate contender, maybe champ, and an immediate star. I mean, his nickname at the time was Starboy. And then a couple things happened. One, COVID happened. So he ended up on the shelf for an entire year right after signing. Like, he signed at the end of 2019, then missed all of 2020. He debuted in the UFC and dropped his first two fights, fought Alexandre Pantoja and Matheus Nicolau 6 weeks apart. In hindsight, that was a tall order for anybody. I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable asking Demetrius Johnson to go through that. 6 weeks apart, those two guys. Yeah. In hindsight, those two losses have aged well. Pantoja's your champ. Nicolau has slotted in, win or lose. I mean, he's been a perennial top 10 guy since then. And then from there, Kape turned on the Jets. I mean, he blasted Ode Osborne, made kind of a doofus of himself by asking for a bonus when he'd missed weight. He's turned into at least some version of the guy we thought we were getting, but he's regressed into being a once-a-year fighter. All of a sudden, now he's 30 years old, and he's fighting the next big thing. He's still just 30 years old. So I'm wondering, has the door already slammed on Manel Kape? I don't know. At his best, I mean, he's going to be shorter than Mokaev, but he's short, compact. I mean, about as much muscle as you can pile onto a 125-pound frame. I mean, to the point that, again, he has missed weight in the UFC. He is explosive. I mean, he starched Ode Osborne with a flying knee. He loves flying stuff. He's about as big a one-shot hitter as there is in the division. I don't know if he's the biggest hitter, but he's on the Mount Rushmore of the hardest hitting flyweights ever. You put him up there with Figueiredo, John Dodson, those type of guys, just crushing power. He prefers not to go to the ground, but when he's there, unless he's taking on truly elite grapplers, he's more than capable of taking care of himself on the ground. He just would rather get back up and go back to striking. I mean, the last person to really, really give him trouble on the ground was Kyoji Horiguchi.
Stud.
Everything is in place that if Kape is not diminished by the injuries that have kept him on the shelf, if the weight cut isn't becoming untenable for him as he passes age 30, everything's in place for him to be the kind of guy that upsets Mokaev and knocks him out of the ranks of the unbeaten. Because here's the thing. Mokaev is a phenom. You and I talked about it a month or two ago when Tatsuro Taira fought most recently, and you asked me who I thought had higher upside between 22-year-old Taira, 23-year-old Mokaev, and I said, I think Taira wins right now, but if one guy goes down as an all-time great in the division, it's probably Mokaev.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Taira has an incredibly mature and composed game for a 22-year-old, whereas Mokaev is one of the most talented fighters in the entire sport, but still gets himself in trouble against less skilled fighters because he's reckless on the feet, especially because he's overeager on the ground. He's such a good grappler, but has been in serious trouble on the ground against less skilled grapplers just because he, again, not composed. He's going crazy like a rabid badger trying to get the finish instead of... it's not out of the realm of possibility that he gets overconfident on the ground, ends up with Kape on his back, and gets tapped out. It's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that he messes around on the feet and Kape clocks him with something. It's hard for me to have that kind of confidence that we're going to get that Manel Kape when, again, his in-cage appearances have been so sporadic over the last couple of years, and he's just cresting the point where you expect to see some diminishing in the skills of a guy at 125 pounds. I'm going to go with Mokaev here. I say Mokaev wins the decision, and it's yet another fight where the detractors are going to have plenty to criticize about Mokaev. I think he's probably going to get him overeager and get himself in trouble at some point. Maybe a Jafel Filio type thing where hopefully not controversy like did he tap, didn't he tap, or anything like that, but where he loses a round because he got in a whole lot of trouble, made a mistake and Kape made him pay but didn't quite finish the fight. I think it's that kind of fight, but I do think Mokaev gets his hand raised at the end.
This is, I don't know if it's my favorite fight on the card because I really am intrigued by that main event, which I'm probably one of the fewer people that are really, really intrigued by the main event. But this fight, I think, I should get to the point where I just say what my favorite fight is and just say not counting the flyweight fight because it's always my answer. It is such a freaking banging division. And as far as that question we had about Mokaev and Tyra, like there was no wrong answer. Mm-hmm. It was steak and lobster. You know what I mean? Like, it was, Corvette or Ferrari or whatever, whatever people's debates are. Like they're all, there's no bad answer. Like you're not upset if you get the other one. I think they made it. I don't know why the fight got pushed off the main card. It might have something to do with Kape's weight issues that maybe they don't want to count on that. I don't know, but it's a top 5 fight to be on this card. Like, rankings wise, I mean, you can make an argument the winner of this fight could get a title shot.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Mokaev is a really good prospect. I mean, he's one of the best in the world. And he's still only 23 years. Like he's a top 5 fighter in the world now, or top 10, or whatever you want to say. He's a technically sound striker with good output. He sets up his attacks well with feints. He's good at like drawing out attacks and then slipping and countering. Just slips out of range and then tags his foe. Keeping himself like slipping out of the defensively slips out of range, but keeps himself in offensive range to land counters. He has fast hands. He cuts angles really well. He has serious power, and he's not even in his power years yet. He's a good pocket boxer, works the body well. I mean, he's crazy athletic. I mean, he hit Cody Durham with this incredible flying knee. He's a great wrestler, and he wrestles a lot. He explodes through his opponent's hips with these entries, cuts the corners well. I mean, we talked earlier about Preston Parsons' peak out. Mokaev's peak off is off the charts when someone sprawls out on him. He's hit suplexes if you stand up on him. Now he needs to control more because he kind of rushes subs. Like I always go back to the weirdly closer fight than you expect against Malcolm Gordon, who's kind of riding high. He is a submission threat. He has 6 subs on his record. He's hard to sub. I mean, he was. I mean, if he taps that some people are upset about, but also like go back to like the Elliott fight where he was in some submission positions and found ways out. His wrestling will slow him down though. Excuse me. Cardio is a question mark for me because he's slowed down the pass, but he also tends to fight in spurts. Like he slowed down against Gordon despite getting a late submission for him. He took the second round completely off against Fiallo in their matchup. So, he would have enough cardio to win later. Kape's a massive flyweight. I mean, he keeps missing weight. So that's one reason. I've compared to this, and I still compare to this, and I compare it to a prime Takanori Gomi the way he fights. He fights out of both stances with powerful striking. He has his hands low. He throws from his hips, relying on him slipping out of the way, being quick enough to counter with a big shot. He's basically your classic pull striker. He's a sniper. He's explosive. He's got fast hands. He really sits on his punches, stepping in. So he's more calculated than Takanori Gomi, but I mean that general like hard sit on my punches and try to end you with every single punch. You mentioned he's one of the biggest power punchers, maybe the biggest power puncher in the division. But like I just talked about Mokaev, Kape will cruise at times too and be too patient, not throw enough. Like he does that a lot. He keep fights closer if he's not putting you out. He has that like boxing. I'm not gonna hurt. I must be winning. When he throws kicks, he's got good body kicks, good calf kicks. He'll toss up a fast high kick. He showed that he can offense wrestle against Pantoja, which you know it was great. But he struggles if you put him on his back. I mean, I go back to like Matthias Nicolau beat him by just taking him down. Even like Ulka Sasaki was taking him down. So the biggest issue for both these guys are that they take long periods of time off. Kape doesn't take all rounds off, but he takes, you know, he'll slow a pace. Kape is super dynamic with his hands, but so is Mokaev. Like it's like we think about Kape smashing and knocking out Mokaev, which is, you know, good possibility. I think it's also just as likely that Mokaev catches Kape with a big shot, especially that he's at the age where he continued to make big improvements. But that said, to me, when I look at these two guys on film, the big gap in skill is the wrestling. I do agree with you that Kape's his offense wrestling is better and he can grapple, but the Mokaev is the best wrestler he's faced, and Mokaev's wrestling is something special. I think Mokaev puts on his back for the majority of the fight. I actually think Mokaev dominates. I think the line is off. I think Mokaev should be a bigger favorite. I think this is going to be a breakout performance. I think this might be one of these performances where he dominates so bad that we start saying, oh, like a lot of the doubters we started saying, oh shit, like is this guy the real deal? Give me Mokaev by decision.
The 5-fight main card of UFC 304 opens up with a featherweight matchup between Arnold Allen and Giga Chikadze. Allen, the 30-year-old Englishman, is 19-3 overall. He's 10-2 in the UFC. That's the good news. The bad news is that he won his first 10 fights in the UFC, and since then has had back-to-back losses, though in his defense, those have come against top 5 fighters, Max Holloway and Movsar Evloev. The most recent of those, the Evloev fight, was at UFC 297 in January. So Allen looking to snap the first losing streak of his career. In order to do so, he's going to have to get past Chikadze. 35-year-old Georgian by way of LA is 15-3 overall. He is 8-1 in the UFC. He had his lone UFC loss just a little over 2 years ago. He's already come back from that with a comeback win over Alex Caceres last August at UFC Fight Night, Holloway versus Korean Zombie. He's been on the shelf ever since. It's been about 11 months. He is finally back in the cage. He is looking to spoil the party for the Englishman. He is not favored to do so. Allen is minus 250, Chikadze plus 200. So, Keith, for a while there, Arnold Allen was just steaming right along. The sky seemed to be the limit. It turns out that the limit is not the sky, but in fact, it is the top 5, because he was trucking right through top 15, then top 10 fighters, you know, Sadiq Youssef, Dan Hooker, Calvin Kattar, ran into Max Holloway and Movsar Evloev. And I mean, he was relatively competitive in both, but no question who won those fights. Have we seen the guy's ceiling, or does he regroup and make another run at things? And how does it go against Chikadze here?
No, I don't think we've seen it ceiling. I like Arnold. I mean, they're not bad losses. You know, I mean, Max Holloway obviously is. I mean, Max Holloway's an all-time great. Like, yeah, any featherweight that's ever lost to Max Holloway, not a big deal. Evlo is special too, you know, and that was a very competitive fight. A lot of people thought Arnold won that fight. So, Chikadze, this is, you know, I think it's a little bit of step on competition. We'll find out. I mean, it's still obviously a tough test. Arnold's a really good athlete. He moves well, especially laterally. He uses his footwork, you know, well. I mean, he was really like his best performance was that Calvin Kattar fight where he was getting Kattar to chase him, and then he'd stop on a dime and he'd just walk Kattar right into some power shots. He's a southpaw that's very technically sound. He throws really short, tight shots, not a lot of tells. He sets up his shots well with feints. I think he's got fast hands, accurate, nice jab. His straight left for the southpaw stance is really good, though he will tend to lead, like he'll lead with that straight left for power, but he can get a little too left happy. He did that against Max Holloway. He also fights behind, I said the second time, he fights behind like a Philly shell. Like he fights with a more traditional Philly shell, not that that like Jake Hadley thing going on. But it's still kind of cool to see, which is rare in MMA. He does slide in the pocket and land some power shots. He throws straight shots down the pipe. He likes to sidestep to his right to give himself different angles and to land the uppercut. Like he's good at the position battle. Like he's just a very good technically sound boxer. He's got power. I mean, he knocked out Yusuf, Hooker, Cater. Like that's 3 good guys in a row. And again, I understand, like you said, is that the ceiling? I mean, that is a step down from the guys he lost to, but like that's still like top 10 guys. Mm-hmm. He's got a good kicking game. He's got a nice high kick. He is, because he has that very boxing heavy style. He is open to leg kicks. Like Sadiq Yusuf had some success just kicking his legs in a fight that was like a one-side shellac, and that was the one thing like Yusuf was doing well. He's also like a good ground fighter. Like he gets to the clinch and muscle his opponents. He's a very good wrestler. Fast entries, really good at winning scrambles. Like against Evloev was taken down, and then he was like Granby rolling and stuff. And I'm like, dude, where did this guy learn Granby rolls? Like he ain't learned that in England. I don't know where he's learning that, but it was cool.
Well, he's been a TriStar for a few years.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. So, I mean, even against like Max Holloway, just like getting smoked, he showed heart and he showed cardio. Like he kept fighting. He didn't quit. Chikadze, I mean, we know we got Chikadze. He's a great kickboxer, great footwork. He's very good striker. He can fight. He fights well. Like he's one of the guys. Like I tell people, they switch positions. He's just as good in both, orthodox or southpaw. Very relaxed and poised. He sees everything coming at him. He's got fast hands. He's very accurate. He uses feints well to set up his shots. He's got serious power in both. He'll put you out with either one. His overhand right is an absolute like kill switch. He also, what I've loved about him is the way he throws it. I've said it before. He throws it at different angles. He in different speeds. He changes up the speed of his attack, so it's hard to time. It's almost like a pitcher throw like a fastball, they'll throw like a change up the next one, or vice versa. He'll throw one nice tight, and the next one kind of whips around you. Good kicks, but he's had he's such a long kickbox career that his chin has some holes. I mean, Calvin Kattar hurt him, and he never recovered. And it was getting tagged up a lot easier because he never recovered the whole fight. He also is a very weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Calvin Kattar took him down twice, and Calvin Kattar is not a wrestler. I mean, his takedown defense is bad. And because of that keeps him from being elite in the division. He's also gassed in the past. So as far as prediction go, I my dog right now is going crazy right here, like trying to get me to pet her. So I actually missed the line. But regardless, I like Allen here, and I like it pretty big. I think it's possible that he could actually do well on the feet with Chikadze, but why risk it? Allen is not that guy to risk things. I expect him to come out, and I expect him to wrestle Chikadze. I expect him to take Chikadze down. I expect him to put him on his ground. I think he's going to beat him up with strikes on the ground. I think Chikadze's tough, and he reaches the cards, but I expect this to be a thrashing. Give me. Like, we don't do, like, most confident. What did you see the bet odds were?
Allen's minus 250, Chikadze plus 200.
Right. That's a pretty big favorite. I was hoping he was, like, under 200. Because I would say, like, this is my most, like, for a closer to pick up, this is one of my most confident picks. Like, I think Allen trashes Chikadze.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there. It's, like, obviously, everybody knows MMA math is iffy at best, actively deceiving at worst, but it is interesting to look at both of these guys fight against Calvin Kattar, just because one, both of them were fairly recent, and secondly, because Calvin Kattar, for as high level fighter as he got at his peak, I mean, where he was definitely a top 10 knocking on the door of the top 5 fighter, he's about as straightforward and predictable a fighter as you can find. Like, exactly what Calvin Kattar is going to do. He's going to march forward and box. And Chikadze had trouble dealing with that. I mean, he's very, as great a kickboxer as he is, he's still, a kickboxer that wants to kick is going to have trouble when you put him on the back foot. Whereas Allen played it to his advantage. Like, it was a matador and a bull. Like you mentioned, he was great at just using Kattar's forward progress against him, walking him into the shots that Allen wanted to throw at him. I agree with you that Allen probably could hold his own on the feet. He's a well-rounded striker. But why would he? And you said it perfectly. Like, as long as he's on the feet, he's going to be open to Chikadze chewing up his lead leg. Once the lead leg is sad and busted, starts going to the body and going to the head. He has absolutely lethal kicks. Like, Chikadze will never have the same highlight reel because he got to the UFC at like age 32 or something, whereas Edson Barboza got to the UFC at age 20. But to me, he just reminds me a lot of an Edson Barboza with actually even a little bit more finesse. Like a little bit. He's like Barboza, but Barboza's like just a power pitcher, and Chikadze actually, has a couple different speeds of curveball that he can throw as well. But you said it. Like, Arnold Allen is absolutely not the fighter that's going to put himself at undue risk. He's a TriStar gym guy. Like, there are different camps that are great for different things. Like, AKA is, if you're a wrestler and you want to become a well-rounded mixed martial artist, AKA is a great place to go. If you're already a good striker and you need someone to make you an elite striker, you go to Trevor Whitman or Jason Perillo. If you're the better fighter, like the more skilled fighter out of two fighters, it would be hard for me to think of a better gym than TriStar Gym to prepare you to have the best possible chance of winning that fight and not pissing it away. Like, it's what made GSP. So I'm with you here. I think Allen engages on the feet exactly as much as he needs to start finding opportunities to get inside on Chikadze's hips, take him down. From there, I think it's a bad mismatch. Allen is a good wrestler, a good topside grappler, good ground and pound, good submissions, and Chikadze has shown severe liabilities on the ground. Those aren't things that are going to get especially better, at his age, at this stage in his career, after that long a kickboxing career. Give me Allen via one-sided decision as well. But I mean, if he jumps out and gets on Chikadze early, like if he takes Chikadze down in the first half of the first round, and by the end of the first round, Allen's busted him up and tried one rear naked choke already, I could see him getting a finish just through attrition, frustration, accumulated damage. Like, I could see him locking up a submission late. But I'll take the safer call here and say Allen gets a one-sided decision. Next up on the UFC 304 main card is a middleweight matchup between Christian Leroy Duncan and Gregory Rodriguez. Duncan, the 28-year-old Englishman, is 10-1 overall. He is 3-1 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Cage Warriors middleweight champ. He is on a 2-fight win streak. Fought most recently in March at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Gaziev, where he knocked out Claudio Ribeiro in the second round. Prior to that, he knocked out Dennis Tululin in the second round last year at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Craig. He will look to make it 3 in a row, establish himself as a force to be reckoned with in the middleweight division, and absolutely delight the English crowd. He had been scheduled to take on Robert Brychek, which definitely would have made that an easier task. Brychek withdrew with an injury. In steps Rodriguez. Good news for us, the viewers, as frankly, it is a more compelling matchup, and it narrows the line to a near pick'em. Duncan is still the favorite, but he's minus 130. Rodriguez plus 110. Keith, let me know who you think wins this one. Obviously, Rodriguez came into the UFC and started absolutely wrecking people. He's had a couple losses since then, but sure, you look at his record. I mean, he's 6-2 in the UFC. It's not like he's a 500 fighter. He's still beating people, and when he beats him, he beats him bad. Does he keep it going here against Duncan, or is this Duncan's night?
This is a really fun matchup. Like, I like both guys a lot. This Rodriguez, you mentioned, like, first of all, both these guys are huge. Rodriguez is massive heavyweight, and I mean Duncan is just as big. Like they look like light heavyweights fight each other. Rodriguez, he's got great output on the feet, constantly marching forward down his opponent. He likes to box in the pocket. though, like he's always been this like get in the pocket, throw big bombs, but he looked like a much more technical, faster fighter in his last, on the feet in his last fight against Brad Tavares than his previous fights in UFC. But I do think that might reflect a little more at Tavares at this point in his career than Rodriguez, but we don't really know. But to his credit, he was throwing a lot more straight shots. He used to be just the guy to get in the pocket, throw some really big power shots. I mean, he's got good hooks and he hits hard, but elite strikers are going to be able to time him out because he loads up a little bit too much, and he also forgets about defense. He's a guy that he's willing to eat a big shot to land one of his own. He also can. Yeah, he's a good grappler. He can close the distance and wrestle. It's definitely something that he probably should look to him more because he take less damage than he does. He gets inside. He got some upper body locks. He can take you down. He can also blast through your hips. Though sometimes he'll kind of just duck his head down and overextend and just kind of grab a leg and toss him because he's so physically strong. If he gets the fight to the ground, he's a very good grappler. Mean ground and pound. He is a submission artist. But he is one of these guys. He'll chase the mission. He'll rush it. He's willing to lose position to get a submission. He's also faded late in fights because of his like berserker style. Duncan, I mentioned he's a big weight class. He looked great in his last fight. He's a really good athlete. Great footwork. Uses his footwork to help him keep his distance and work from the outside. He's also good at hand fighting and using his size to kind of keep his distance because he can reach his opponent's hands and kind of control and get his range. He hates being pressured, though. He wants to work from distance. He's a great kickboxer with quick hands, very accurate, bit of a sniper, uses his feints well to set up his shots, attacks with combinations. When you come inside him, he starts looking for some mean uppercuts. He has great power. He does also like land elbows inside when his opponent gets too close, which is a nasty thing he does. Defensively, he stands a little too tall for my liking, keeping his chin high in the air. He's got a massive kicking game now. Throws a lot of kicks, nice teep kicks. Tosses out some spinning kicks, spinning wheel kicks, back kicks like that. He showed against Clay Riley. He can wrestle though. Like you overextend or something, he's gonna drop out. You have to take you down. He's got some. I mean, he would beat the crap out of him with a ground and pound. And he's hard to take down himself. So as far as this fight goes, I kind of see this fight is going to be one-sided affair. I'm just not sure which way it's going to go. Like, it's very like, yeah. I mean, this could be a really one-sided affair either way, or it could be a really close battle. So I'll just cover all my bases. No. I kind of see two most likely, or at least it'd be smarter for Rodriguez if he does this. It's very possible Rodriguez is able to close the distance and just dominate the ground. But I also think it's very possible that Duncan is too fast for him and too explosive for him and just picks apart and starches him when he makes a mistake and he's too technical for him. I'm going to go with the former. I'm going to say that Rodriguez presses the action, gets inside, gets the fight to the ground. I think Rodriguez keeps Duncan down for long periods of time, landing some mean ground and pound. I think it's gonna be that one setback where I don't think it's. I think it's gonna be more of a speed bump for Duncan. Like I still think he's gonna rise high up the rankings, but I think he's gonna get beat up the ground. I think he's actually gonna make a mistake, and I think Rodriguez might even submit him. Give me Rodriguez by second round sub.
All right, folks. Those who have been waiting for the inevitable unanimous upset pick from Shillen and Duffy, here it is, and. First thing I'm going to say is I absolutely agree with you that this is likely to be a lopsided fight no matter who wins. So it'll be one of those ones where we're both picking Rodriguez and spoiler, we're both picking him to win by finish. But if Duncan wins, he's probably just going to starch Rodriguez in 4 minutes and everyone's going to come after us like, oh, you guys are dumb. You didn't believe in Duncan. No, I believe in Duncan. I'm saying it's probably a finish either way. It's probably a highlight reel either way. And it's 55%, 45%. My second most likely outcome here is that Duncan knocks Rodriguez out bad or opens up another cut on him that we're like, oh, dude, maybe this guy needs to retire because he splits from navel to eyebrows when somebody punches him squarely. Duncan, he really is a great athlete. His highlight reel in Cage Warriors, there were a ton of knockouts and obviously, yes, he's explosive, lots of spinning stuff, flying stuff, but there are quite a few explosive people in high level MMA. What he is also that's maybe not as common is he's smooth. Like his movement is smooth, just fluid. He's not built like Israel Adesanya or Michael Page. You know, they're much thinner, lankier guys, but there's a little bit of that smoothness to Duncan's game. And I was wondering if that would translate to the UFC level. For the most part, it has. I'm picking Rodriguez here as well, but as the younger fighter and the one whose skill set is still a work in progress, if one of these guys is ever champ of the division, I think it's probably Christian Leroy Duncan. But as of right now, Duncan's ground game is better than you would think. You mentioned he's capable of some nice, unexpected offensive takedowns, but he has struggled when he's been put on the ground. And the UFC seems to recognize that. The UFC has matched both of these guys against fellow strikers wherever possible. It's interesting how many of the same guys they both fought. Armin Petrosian, Dusko Todorovic, Denis Chilulan. Just name off your European kickboxer that hates going to the ground. Both these guys have fought them. And what that means is Rodriguez is the best grappler that Duncan will have faced in the UFC. The opposite is not true. And I think Rodriguez, especially now kind of well settled in at Kill Cliff, is going to be smart enough to try to take that route to victory. It's still easier said than done. Duncan is a hard guy to find and get a hold of in the cage, but I do think he eventually chases him down, gets him down, and goes to work from there. I would not be surprised either if he ended up tapping out Rodriguez or pounding him out late. I'm going to go for that as well. And I always feel a little nervous going out on a limb, picking something we've never seen before. Duncan's only lost once, and it was by decision in a fight that took place primarily on the feet. But here, I do think Rodriguez eventually overwhelms him on the ground. I'll take him by a second round TKO, ground and pound. Third from the top at UFC 304, perhaps the people's main event, is a lightweight matchup between King Green and Paddy Pimblett. Green, the 37-year-old Californian, is 32-15-1 with one no contest overall. He is 13-10-1 with one no contest since joining the UFC out of the acquisition of Strikeforce. He is coming into this off a win. He appeared at UFC 300, ruining Jim Miller's birthday party, basically, taking a dominant unanimous decision over him. He will look to make it 2 in a row here against Pimblett. Pimblett, 29-year-old Liverpudlian, is 21-3 overall. He is 5-0 since joining the UFC as the former Cage Warriors featherweight champ and a one-time lightweight title challenger there as well. He is, again, perfect 5-0 in the UFC. He hasn't fought since last December when he took a unanimous decision over Tony Ferguson. And prior to that, he hadn't fought since a full year before that, December of 2022, when he took a fairly contentious decision against Jared Gordon. So Pimblett getting a early start on the year by his own standards, fighting in July now, and he is a slight underdog. King Green, minus 120. Paddy Pimblett available even money, plus 100.
No.
I'm going to say a bunch of nice things about Paddy Pimblett, and then I'm going to say a bunch of bad things, mean things about him. I don't even know which order I'm going to go in.
Don't do that. Be nice.
The good things about Paddy Pimblett are he is a relentlessly entertaining fighter.
Yeah.
Win, lose, or draw. His fights are a lot of fun. That's also one of the bad things. I'll get to that in a minute. He has improved as a fighter. He's still on the right side of 30. And if you compare his fights in the UFC to his fights, say, 2016, 2017, 2018 in Cage Warriors, when he was kind of making his way up the ranks, there's a measurable improvement, especially in his striking. He's still not a great striker. He's definitely not as good a striker as he thinks he is, but there's been improvement there. He has a pretty delightful personality. He's definitely been sniping at King Green, but for the most part, he's been one of those guys like, again, early Israel Adesanya, where he was there to have a good time, but it wasn't necessarily at the expense of his opponent. That's changed. Now Adesanya is a vicious and inappropriate trash talker. But with Paddy Pimblett, it's at his best, it's a party and everybody's invited, including his opponent. The bad things about Pimblett, he is a good grappler, not a great grappler, but a good grappler. But he will slug things out on the feet to his own detriment. He wants to entertain the crowd. Maybe he thinks he's a better striker than he actually is, but he is 5-0 in the UFC, and multiple times he has come close to upsetting his own apple cart by being too willing to slug it out. He got rocked by Luigi Vendramini. Yep. I don't know how many significant strikes Luigi Vendramini landed in the UFC, but 85% of them were on Paddy Pimblett's face. And they just didn't need to be. Pimblett is not a shoot through your hips college wrestler. He's not.
No.
He's not Michael Chandler or Josh Koscheck, but he's pretty good at getting the fight to the ground. He's good at taking the back standing, creating scrambles. He's a long-limbed guy, even as he's moved up the weight classes. He has ways of getting the fight to the ground that don't involve just leaving his face on the gunnery range. He chooses to put his face on the gunnery range. It's come close to hurting him. Even Tony Ferguson hurt him. The problem is, at this point, Pimblett has become victimized by his own success. He's won 5 straight. He's beaten badly overmatched guys. He's beaten guys that were pretty much tailor-made in terms of stylistic matchups. He's beaten guys that he's just way bigger than, like Gordon. He's beaten guys whose name value exceeds their competitive value at this point in their career, like Tony Ferguson. And now he's going against somebody in green where if he does the Paddy Pimblett thing and tries to rouse the crowd by getting in a brawl with him, he is going to get absolutely murked. I might slightly favor green, even if I knew Pimblett was going to sell out like hell to get the fight to the ground. Even if I knew that's what was going to happen, if I were in his camp and party to his game planning for this, I still might favor green because taking green down is not easy unless you're Islam Makhachev. But I have no faith that that's what's going to happen. And even at his best, Pimblett has to come forward and get really close to get his takedown attempts. They mostly involve, things from the clinch or hitting like a pseudo knee tap from close range. All those things involve getting within range of Bobby Green's fists. Green, as he pushes 40, has kind of stopped messing around. He still doesn't win every time out. Sometimes he's overmatched. Sometimes he just gets caught and starched like Jalen Turner did to him last year. But Bobby Green is no longer the guy that just throws away fights. I think he's become a little more serious about things, and he's in that little sweet spot, that little zone where, he's 37, but his physical gifts have not really started to decline steeply, and now he's fighting to the best of his abilities. He's a good boxer, slightly unorthodox one, keeps his hands kind of low.
Yeah.
That actually stands to help him against the guy that's going to need to get onto his hips to take him down. His punches, his jab, as well as his power punches come from odd angles. He has good power, and he has the good power that doesn't come from overswinging. It just comes from having his feet under him, having good technique, and his punches often hitting people at a time and from an angle they don't expect. This is a bad matchup for Paddy Pimblett. Like, outside of somebody who's just in the top 5 and a million times better fighter than him, Green's about as bad as they come. A good boxer with good power, good takedown defense, and good sub defense. I'm surprised that he's only a -120 favorite. I think Pimblett's going to mess around on the feet early on. I don't think he's going to like what he gets. I think that game plan of rouse up the crowd is going to be gone in about 2 minutes, but I don't think it's going to even make a difference from there. I think Green is going to connect with Pimblett's face early, often, and hard. Pimblett is extremely tough. Like I say, he's gotten rung up by a lot of his UFC opponents, but he's been the guy with his hand raised at the end. I think he makes it out of the first round. By the second round, I do think he's going to be looking for the takedown on something approaching a desperate level, but that's not going to help either, because if Green knows that's what you need to do, he's going to be ready for it. Give me Bobby Green by second round knockout here. The crowd's not going to love it. Green may have the charisma to get a few cheers out of him by the end of things, especially if he's conciliatory towards Pimblett, or he may just, turn full heel and see if he can get people throwing shit at him. I don't know which it is, but I do feel strongly that Bobby Green gets the knockout here.
Yeah, this is man. So at the beginning, I'll get to that later, but I think you're right. These guys are going to stay on media day. I mean, Patty's got such a big personality. Bobby Green can talk. He's not a trash talker, believe it or not. Like he's not really him, but he can talk and he can pump up a crowd. I'll say this about Patty. He's more like he's the people who thought Patty was going to be special. He's not as good as they thought, but he's more skilled than the haters give him credit for. And he's a better athlete than he looks. He flows well. Like he's got some good footwork. The problem is his striking is really inconsistent. I mean, for a guy his striking is poor for an upper echelon UFC talent, and that's where he stands on the card. But it's still better than like the Patty Pimblett haters say. He's a big lightweight, even though he used to be a feadweight.
He used to be a bantamweight. He was a bantamweight when he got to Cage Warriors.
There you go. So, yeah. And you see some pictures of him, he gets a heavyweight. Like, it's freaking crazy. Dude, no, that's why he's friends with McCann, because their name's Meatball. So he does have power. Like, we talk about, like, Luigi Ferravante, like, landing big shots on him, but Patty also blasted him. So he got some power. But he has so many defense. Well, you mentioned, like, he gets tagged up. He's so hittable. He drops his hands. He backs straight up. He keeps his chin high in the air. He doesn't like being pressured. He wants to be the one moving forward. So he does throw a lot of kicks, but they're kind of just range finders. Some of it's just to keep distance. He'll throw up question mark kicks. Like, that's one of his go-to. And he also throws some flying knees, but that's also a way for him to close distance. His best position, when you think about his grappling, I think his best position might actually be the clinch. Like, he likes to get in there and get some body lock takedowns, trip takedowns, where in there. I mean, if you go back, like, he had a lot of success against Jared Gordon in the clinch. Let me say something about that Jared Gordon fight. I think I scored it for Gordon. I might have scored it for Patty. I'm not sure. It was very close. It is not the robbery that people pretend it was. Neither guy did much in that fight. So, but people I see people say worst decision of all time. And all. It's like, you mean if you change Patty Pimblett with just some random mediocre MMA fighter, we don't even talk about that fight again. Like, stop. It was not that bad of a decision. Like, anyways, but back to this. He had a beautiful judo throw against Kazula Fargas. Again, I'm not mentioning world class guys. You mentioned I'd say he's a solid wrestler. You talk about, like, more of a grappler type than your explosive NCAA wrestler. Yeah, he's one of these guys, like, he'll get in close and like do like a quick slide by or like a quick duck under when a guy reaches over the top or makes a mistake. But a lot of his goal is not even to get the fight to ground, just kind of get a scramble going. And he's a guy. He's a weak defensive wrestler, especially because he'll jump guard. He'll try to, like, jump. He definitely will jump guillotine. He's flexible on his back. He has a submission threat. I mean, he's some Jordan Levitt, which, who's known for his grappling. He changed tacks together well. But the problem is he's slowed down in fights, and he slowed down big time in the Tony Ferguson fight. Bobby Green, you mentioned, like, he's a boxer of the feet. That's what he's known for. He likes to fight on both stances. Great footwork. One thing he does is kind of lean his head out and keep his hands low, and he kind of baits guys to reach for his head while he keep his hand low, so he can kind of just, like, lean, pull back and then counter from weird angles and land hard shots. He has that, like, up jab, but he throws for his hips. A majority of his work comes off of that jab. He does really well to, like he also lead with that rear punch. Like, he'll kind of bait with the left hand and then dart in real quick. Very, like, Michael Venom Page style. Like, he'll kind of wait, and then he just throws everything he is to that right hand. And it helps him really close the distance. He's also, like, one of his best things he's good at landing first sliding out of the counter and then coming back with third. So he's like good. They say like being first and third. He's good at that. He can land while backing up. He one mistake, even though he's a good boxer, like he can really move and pick guys at range. He'll throw it out of the pocket. He'll give you that. If you, he's got some good elbows inside. He was doing some dumb spinning things against Jim Miller for no reason. We've talked about it before, and I think to your point, I don't think he does it as much as he was, but he can cruise and show kind of lack of urgency. We've talked about this so many times, but he has that like, if I'm not getting hit, I'm doing okay. But like again, I think that was a lot like 5-6 years ago when he was in like kind of a slump. His output has really improved. I mean, look at the Jim Miller fight. I mean, his output was good. He showed power. I mean, he knocked out Grant Dawson recently. He bushed Jim Miller's face up in his last fight. Defense, yeah, he's slipping, but he also rolls with punches, which I don't like. I don't think it looks good, but he was smart in his last fight against Jim Miller. When Jim Miller throw a big combination, he'd miss. He'd show that he missed, and he'd do something to show him like didn't hit me. Kind of showing the judges like that didn't land. I don't think his athleticism has faded, like you said, but the one thing I am concerned at his age, his chin might have, because I mean he got knocked out by Drew Dober. He got dropped by Tony Ferguson in their fight. I mean, everyone remembers the butcher knee put on Ferguson, but early he got hurt. I mean, he was knocked dead by Jalen Turner. I mean, even Jim Miller hurt him a little bit in a fight that was a one-side like thrashing. So that is concerning. He's a good wrestler, and he's actually been using his wrestling more. I don't expect him to do it against Patty, but he's been using his wrestling more. He's hard to take down, and if he does, he pops right back to you. I mean, you mentioned Islam Makhachev can hold him down, but like Patty's a good ground wrestler and grappler. He ain't Islam Makhachev. So before the show said, I said I had one issue with a matchup, and if you're in England, this is supposed to be Patty, like a big moment for Patty. Third from the top, pay-per-view in England. And I understand you can't protect him forever and all this stuff. But yeah, he's going to have moments at the press conference, and there's going to be talks. He's going to say something. I just think they picked the wrong guy. I think this is the wrong fight. I know you can't book Tony Ferguson yet, but the Tony Ferguson would have been a perfect matchup like this. Like, you got a Clay Guida. If you could have grabbed the name and gave Patty a big win. I mean, again, I understand that you can't protect him forever. I understand that, but I think Reed is a terrible stylistic matchup for him. I think Reed's terrible. I think that. Listen, I'm not good.
Like Rafael Fiziev is ranked higher than Green, but would be a more winnable matchup for Patty.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not a betting guy. Like, that's not me. I'm not. I don't. I mean, guys make jokes about me always saying the line's too close, this and that, and And I understand that there's some of the betting is to get like the odds, not necessarily how Vegas says the fight will go, but sometimes just getting people to bet. Yeah. What will bring the most money in? I understand that, but I think Green should be at least a 2-1 favorite. I think he's too fast. I think he's too technical on the feet. I think he hits too hard. I think he batters Patty in the first, and I think I had the same thing. Like, Patty's so freaking tough, he might survive the first, but I think Green turns it up, and I think Green makes a freaking statement. I think he puts him out cold. Give me Green by second round TKO.
That brings us to the co-main event of UFC 304. An interim heavyweight title fight between reigning interim champ Tom Aspinall and challenger Curtis Blades. Aspinall, the 31-year-old Mancunian, literal hometown fighter, 14-3 overall, 7-1 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight win streak since his injury loss to Blades almost exactly 2 years ago. He had his comeback fight last July, flattened Marcin Tybura in 1:13, then fought Sergey Pavlovich last November at UFC 295 for the interim heavyweight title, knocked out Pavlovich in 1:09. With lineal champ John Jones still on the shelf, we now have an interim title defense, and Aspinall will be rematching the guy that at least was standing there watching when he had his lone UFC loss. Blades, 33-year-old Oklahoman by way of Illinois, 18-4 with 1 no contest overall, 13-4 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He won his last time out. He fought at UFC 299 back in March, knocked out Jailton Almeida in the second round. That got Blades back on track after his loss in his own meeting with Pavlovich, which was last April at UFC Fight Night 222. He got knocked out in the first round. Odds here favor Aspinall. Favor Aspinall overwhelmingly. He is minus 400. Blades plus 300. Wow. Coming back. There are some good reasons why the fan base, the media, other fighters are so high on Aspinall. For a guy with a relatively short career, he's still only 31 years old. You know, he got 17 career fights, got 8 fights in the UFC. He's done remarkable work. He's 7-1. The one loss was a frankly freakish injury. And in the 7 wins, he's only been past the midpoint of round 1 twice. Once was against Andrei Arlovsky, where he really was just, I think he could have finished Arlovsky much quicker, but just kind of took his time. And then the other was Alexander Volkov, who made it to like the 3.5 minute mark. Aside from that, it's just been butchery. He's walked out, landed a couple punches, taken the opposing fighter down generally on his first try, pounded on him a few times, and either gotten the TKO or taken their back and choked him out. He's made it look pretty damn easy. By the eyeball test, it's just, even compared to other fighters that we've said this kind of thing about, it is startling to see a man his size, 6'5", 265 pounds, just pushing the heavyweight limit, move as nimbly as he does on the feet and on the ground. He is a rare athlete for the division. So it's understandable why people are so excited about Aspinall. And the Pavlovich fight, the odds were fairly close, but he managed to win that fight in a way that raised his stock. If he'd taken Pavlovich down and choked him out, I don't think anybody would have been shocked, but instead, no. He beat him to the punch, caught him clean, and just plunked him in exactly the way that anyone who was picking Pavlovich would have expected the fight to end. He is a hell of a fighter. As much as he's done already, his potential just, it seems to be limitless. I at least was kind of on pins and needles when he came back last summer and took on Marcin Tybura, because there was every possibility that he might beat Tybura, might beat him easily, but not necessarily look like the same guy. A severe knee injury like that, especially on a guy that's the size of an NFL defensive end, it was worth wondering, is he going to have lost a step? Is he still going to be a good fighter, maybe a great fighter, but not a special fighter the way he had looked up until that point? He appears to be no worse for wear. He is still stunningly nimble on the feet, especially for a guy of his size. Yeah, he's obviously great grappler from childhood. His dad was the BJJ coach at Team Caolan. Incidentally, I think his dad might be able to beat Mick Parkin or Lukasz Brzeski. He's a big, mean-looking old dude, and always had great power as a striker. But I feel as though he's refined his game. He's more sound defensively. He throws straighter punches. He's becoming a complete fighter. It's a scary prospect. Having said all that, for him to be a 4-1 favorite against Blades says something, because Blades is 13-4 in the UFC, and he's one of those guys that the 4 fights he's lost have basically all been the exact same way. They haven't looked exactly the same, but it's the same pattern. Either stuff his takedown or get back up, and then hit him with one shot hard enough to put him down. Like, you would think, okay, yeah, Blades has 4 losses. They're all by knockout. His problem must be his chin. His problem is not his chin. His chin is great. Some very, very good fighters have hit this guy cleanly, but only maybe the 3 hardest hitters in heavyweight history. At worst, no worse than 3 of the 6 or 7 hardest hitters in heavyweight history are the ones who put him down. Like, you can't be Alexander Volkov and beat Blades. You're not going to get a chance to tag him with 5 or 6 punches. It's been people that can hit him with one punch hard enough to at least put him on skates, if not put him all the way out. It's Francis Ngannou, Derek Lewis, Sergey Pavlovich. That's it. Everyone else, obviously, what makes the motor run is his wrestling. He's probably the greatest offensive wrestler in heavyweight MMA history. Like he has the UFC takedown record, but I mean that's just a number. What really shows is that anyone he's wanted to take down, he's basically been able to, like, except Ngannou. And that's just because Ngannou's gotten on him fast both times they fought. So Aspinall at -400 is basically people saying that, yeah, Aspinall is going to be able to fight off Blades' takedowns, and he's going to be able to hit him hard enough and quickly enough that Blades doesn't get a chance to go 0 for 3 on takedowns. He's going to go 0 for 1 and he's going to be done. One interesting twist here is that Aspinall might be the only guy that Blades has ever fought, and he's fought some very good ground fighters. He might be the only guy that Blades has ever fought that I'm not sure taking Aspinall down and parking in his guard is a safe place. We haven't seen much of Aspinall working from his back. Like, typically he's been I take you down and kick your ass. But if Blades takes down Aspinall and Aspinall just bucks and like sweeps the top position,
yeah,
it's going to be an ugly night for Curtis Blades. I think what we're going to get is something along those lines. I don't think Aspinall is just going to earhole Blades in 60 seconds, like Ngannou did in their second fight. I'm betting the Blades gets Aspinall down, and Aspinall either sweeps Blades, gets on top, and puts him in some serious trouble, or Aspinall gets back up easier than anybody Blades has taken down before. Because even Derek Lewis had to kind of ride it out till the rest of, for most of the first round, then caught Blades coming in the second. I could see Aspinall as one of the few guys in the division that has more just lean bulk than Blades, just kind of big brothering him from down there. I could see Blades getting a takedown and Aspinall either just popping back up immediately or, again, sweeping him, taking top position, and then we get to see what Blades looks like on the bottom. I favor Aspinall here. Just Blades has routes to victory, but they would require him to kind of thread a needle, not perfect, but pretty damn careful. Whereas Aspinall has multiple ways to win this. He could replicate the Ngannou Pavlovich way to victory, just sidestep a takedown, punch him as he walks by and put him down. He could do the Lewis thing, ride out a bit of a storm on the ground, get up and catch him clean next time. Or he could do something we haven't seen before where he actually out grapples Blades after being taken down. Give me Aspinall. I think we see a first round KO here. If I were forced to choose between it being on the feet or on the ground, I'm going to say it happens on the ground. Like, Blades just still has an incredible double leg. He's really good at chaining his techniques in a way that really no other top heavyweight besides Daniel Cormier has been able to do. And Blades has more of an actual heavyweight body. Like, I think Aspinall is going to end up getting taken down, and it's not going to matter. Give me Aspinall by TKO late in the first round, and Blades will have to be content with gradually climbing the list of the greatest fighters never to win a major title.
But you said it's going to be on the ground. So I thinking
swept, ends in top position, hammers him from half guard, and Blades is either out or turns his back, and we have a choke. But I'm going to say it's a TKO.
Yeah. Okay. I knew Aspinall, he's the champion. He's like really hot heavyweight that I was excited about. I expected him to be a over exaggerated favorite. I didn't expect him to be 4-1 favorite against Curtis Blades.
In their first fight, he was like -160, -170. He was like not even a 2-1
favorite.
favorite.
A little bit higher than that. I mean, yeah, you're right. Technically, Curtis Blades has a win on him. Yeah, I expect like -220 or something like that. But like then I'm always freaking wrong. So I should just stop talking about betting lines. Aspinall's. I mean, he's. You don't realize how big he is. I know we always talk about how big Curtis Blades is. Aspinall's the same thing. I mean, the kid dude's 6'5". He's when he's standing like face to face with Sergey Pavlovich. That's when you realize, because how big Sergey Pavlovich is. So that's when you realize like how big he is.
Yeah, Aspinall was like 2 inches taller and just broad.
Like he just doesn't look like, you see him in interviews and you're like, holy shit. But I think it also is the way he fights. I mean, he's long and lengthy, but he's so athletic. He moves so fast. He moves like a middleweight. Despite being a heavyweight, he's got really good footwork. He cuts angles on the feet well, so he's kind of getting his opponents guessing. He works out of both stances. He's got very fast hands for heavyweight, very explosive. We saw that against Sergey Pavlovich. He's accurate. He throws straight shots down the pipe. He's super good. I mean, he was willing to throw down with Sergey Pavlovich, which is a gutsy thing, and he's faster. And it's like, it was like a quick draw. It was like, it reminded me. Spoiler alert! It reminded me of the end of Tombstone. You've seen Tombstone?
Yeah.
Like he was quicker. You know what I mean? And he's just good at getting to the point of contact, and he's got massive power in both of his hands. He mixes striking and takedowns together really well. He's not this explosive power wrestler, more of a grappler, but he can get the fight to the ground, which you don't have to be like explosive wrestler at heavyweight. There's not many guys who are very good at wrestling. Dude's a stud on the ground. I mean, go back to like Sergey Spivak, smashed him up with ground and pound. He quickly subbed Andre Arlovski, quickly subbed Alexander Volkov, which was a good win then. And it's even aged even better now, because Volkov's had a nice little run himself. Blades, I mean, a really big dude. He's well rounded. He doesn't get enough credit for his striking. He sets up his shots well with feints, good straight shots. I mean, he has power. I mean, go back to like the Chris Dawkins fight, knocked him out. Not the best fight IQ though. I mean, he stood in the pocket and slugged it out with some of the like most dangerous guys in history, particularly recently against Sergey Pavlovich. He shoulder rolls, which is also very dangerous in any weight class, but especially for heavyweight. He's got some thudding leg kicks. I mean, he's a great wrestler, which, I mean, you think about the history of the heavyweight division. He's one of the best in the history of the heavyweight division, which is really impressive considering, I mean, when you think of the other guys in the division who are the all-time great wrestlers, you're thinking, Olympian Randy Couture. You're thinking, NCAA All-American Cain Velasquez, Olympian Daniel Cormier, Mark Coleman, NCAA champion, multi-time NCAA champion, Kevin Randleman, actually, I think Coleman won once and Randleman.
Coleman won once, Randleman twice.
Randleman twice. Yeah, NCAA champ. But Coleman went to the Olympics. I mean, you're talking. He's not credentialed.
No, he's like JUCO national champ. Which,
yeah, he's not a Hodge Trophy winner like Bo Nickel. No. You know what I mean? Like, this is not what he is. But he's got fast entries. He cuts the corner well. He blasts through the hips. He's got good top game, and he's got good top control. I mean, he's held on good grab. I mean, Alexander Volkov, I just said it. He held him. He's a good grappler. Held him down. Shamil Abdurrahman, massive dude who's likes to grapple, held him down for long periods of time. The other thing about it, he has no issues with stalling on top. Like, if he takes Aspinall now and Aspinall starts like trying to sweep in that, Curtis Blades has no issues laying on top for 3 minutes at a time, not doing much and getting booed by the English crowd. He don't give a shit. He'll slowly work inch by inch to get a better position, and look for control. Once he gets his opponent tired, then he unloads some mean ground and pound. He's just a big dude that he just kind of like punches through people's guards. And he has some of the really mean ground and pound. He did show cardio against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but he did gas a little against Volkov in the past in their like fight. The biggest issue, and it's always been an issue, though it may be a little exaggerated, but the biggest issue with Curtis Blades has been his chin. He's been knocked out a lot. I mean, but to his credit, when you look at who he's been knocked out by, he's been knocked out twice by Francis Ngannou, once by Derek Lewis, and once by Sergey Pavlovich. It's like, oh, you mean like historically 3 of the biggest knockout artists in the history of the UFC. So like, oh, so I don't, but
If anybody could do it, he wouldn't be 13-4.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. But the thing is Aspinall in that crowd? I think he might be. The crowd's going to be rocking for Aspinall. I mean, Blades is walking into some enemy territory. I don't think this is going to go well for him. I think Aspinall is going to be too fast for him on the feet. I think he's going to cut angles, be around the counters of Blades, and I think he finally finished it with a big shot. I think Aspinall puts Blades out early. I think he continues that descent. I think there's a large, very large crowd that thinks that Tom Aspinall's the best heavyweight in the world. I think that crowd gets even bigger come Saturday. I think Aspinall knocks out Curtis Blades in the first round. Give me Aspinall by first round knockout.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC 304, a rematch for the UFC welterweight title between champ Leon Edwards and challenger Belal Muhammad. Edwards, the 32-year-old Brit, is 22-3 with 1 no contest overall. He's 14-2 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He's on a 13-fight unbeaten streak. He won the title just under 2 years ago with a sensational, well, Rocky-like come from behind head kick knockout in the 5th round of a fight that he frankly had been losing pretty badly. Dethroned Kamaru Usman, then beat him more convincingly in their rematch last March, defended last December against Colby Covington, again, winning a very convincing decision. Now he has some unfinished business with Muhammad. Muhammad, 36-year-old Palestinian American, is 23-3 with 1 no contest overall. He is 14-3 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He is on a 10-fight unbeaten streak. Fought most recently in May of last year at UFC 288, taking a unanimous decision over Gilbert Burns. He's on a 5-fight win streak. These two, of course, met in March of 2021 in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 187, a competitive fight through 1 round, had been going the way of Edwards when early in the 2nd round, it ended in a no contest when Edwards landed an inadvertent but extremely egregious and damaging eye poke on Muhammad. Rather than remake the fight immediately, both of them went their own ways. They are meeting now again a little over 3 years later. Your champ, Edwards, is the favorite, of course. He's minus 210. Muhammad plus 170 as the underdog. Keith, and it's not you're not the promoter. It's not your job to sell me these fights, just to tell me about them. But if it were your job to sell me this fight, how do you sell me, or how do you sell the listeners a fight where they might go, well, I saw this 3 years ago. It ended early, but it looked like Edwards was winning. Why should I care now?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you just sell 2 best guys in the world. You sell it as, they've been waiting for this moment for 3 years. You sell the winning streaks, longest winning streaks. What's it? What's Leon Edwards on? Like 13
fight unbeaten
okay,
streak.
13.
Muhammad on 10.
So you sell the winning streak. You sell unfinished business. They've been waiting 3 years to fight. You have Muhammad start saying that Edwards, he should have got the rematch immediately, and Edwards ducked him. You sell that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would. I mean,
yeah.
And then you also
you don't need to sell me. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. Sorry, man. I keep having problems with my voice tonight. You sell the and both guys improved so much since then. 2 hottest guys in the sport finally facing each other. A long time coming. You know what I was thinking about when you were talking about the win streaks and how both these guys kind of took the similar path where they had to go through the who's who, and they didn't have they weren't marketable like queens. They didn't have any buzz about them because of their personalities and their fighting styles. And I think about not necessarily Edwards, because when Edwards beat Usman, obviously winning the title changes your clout, but how he did it, the story, that he showed that it wasn't a fluke win again, had the big rivalry kind of thing with Colby. Colby could sell anything. The comments about his dad and everything kind of made Edwards a little bit of a fan favorite based on it. So he's kind of got pushed over, not to where he probably should be, but he's got pushed over. Muhammad is not. I mean, I love the whole like Bilal Muhammad, like everyone hate Bilal Muhammad. It's kind of like tongue in cheek thing. It's kind of funny. That said, the people who make those jokes on the internet really don't hate the guy. The UFC really does. not in the like he's a good analyst and like breaking down fights, but I mean like they don't want to be champion. He had to win 10 fights to get a title shot. Imagine if he loses. Like how long it would take him to get back. It would be
an Okami or Fitch thing. The UFC will cut him the next time he loses.
I don't know if it'd be that bad, but because he's more of a company man than John Fitch was.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't really know about Okami, but that it might have that. There to get back. I don't think it's cut, but the same thing to come back and be, oh my, he'd have to go into like another 10, even if it's like close split decision, controversial. Like he's got a lot. 10 fight going into enemy territory in London, or is it in England?
This is Manchester. Yeah, but I mean Manchester is actually closer to where Edwards is from.
So what is Manchester like? So if London's like the New York, what is Manchester like? The LA, the Chicago, what are they? Is that like the number 2 city?
I mean, I don't think they're the number 2 city in terms of size, but you know, it's kind of an interesting regional place with its own culture. It's obviously produced a lot of it's produced a lot of musical trends and stuff. I mean, you might call it like Boston or Chicago or something. Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna sound really. I'm assuming that's where Manchester United is from. I'm assuming.
Yep. Manchester United, Manchester City, like
the team. Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, like I know that's like the biggest. I mean, I don't know if it's the biggest team, but it's one of the biggest teams. It's the only soccer team I know, so it must be. Right now, like Europeans must be dying. Like I didn't know for sure, like 100% sure that do they have a mascot? Like Manchester is United like the mascot name?
But no, they don't really do stuff like that. No,
they don't do. They just name the city and that's it. So like if we were playing football, it'd be like New England and that's it. There's no other page, just New England. Okay, Ben is a very versed world traveler. So as far as this fight goes, what sells me is the stylistic matchup, and not in the sense like these are the 2 most exciting guys and that, but that they're so good and that it really is going to be a mental battle and who can make the right adjustments. And it's going to be that it's an X and O's battle. And I need to be sold on fights with some trash talk or some backstories, but then I am so also a purist too, where no, just 2 of the best guys competing also interest me. And that's how I stand on this fight. Leon Edwards, the thing that stands out to me is like, he's such a well-rounded fighter. And you know, people call him a striker, and I'm like, yeah, I guess. I mean, like it's like when people call Demetrius Johnson a striker. Like, yeah, he's really good at striking, but
he's also the best grappler in the division. Guess what?
Yeah. And that could be the case with Leon Edwards. I mean, he's so well rounded. He's a southpaw, but that said, he's constantly switching stances. Especially he'll switch his like on the way his opponent attacks him, he'll like sidestep back into a different stance. He's a very technically sound striker. He moves well, good footwork. I mean, I've said this before, his first defense is just not being there when you try to hit him. He's got good head movements. He understands range really well. He's a master at keeping his range, especially the kickbox range that he wants. He's an accurate striker, sets up his shots well with feints, draws out his opponent's attacks and then counters. He's also good at drawing feints or moving guys where he wants them. I mean, that's a perfect case with the head kick knockout to win the title. He moved Usman where he wanted him. He has power, but he isn't that one punch fight ending guy. I mean, of course, he obviously high kicked Usman, but I'm saying that's not his game. His game is that cumulative, finally put you out that way. He's not like one hitter quitter kind of guy. He loves to, when he's not, winning from the outside, and he has a great kicking game, jab, everything. When he loves to also close distance and just uses. I mean, he's a massive. He was bigger than Kamaru Usman, and I've met Kamaru Usman in person, and he's freaking huge. And Leon Edwards is even bigger than him. And I think we talked about Aspinall like being bigger than he looks, and when you see him face to face, Edwards has the same weight because he's not like Usman, you can see he's wide. And they don't see like, wow, Edwards is tall, and like, well, he actually is a lot wider than he looks. He just, I think his torso is like thinner.
I'm 100% on, like, cause I've covered one of his events live. I've been face to face with him. Completely agree with you. I was surprised at how big he was.
I think he has that like Phil Davis body where it's like skinny and then wider up top.
Yeah, like the V taper, almost like a cartoon character type thing.
Yeah. Like that's what's going on. So he'll use that size and get in the clinch and grind, but he's not boring. He'll beat the shit out of you in the clinch. He'll like I say, like Usman was always about wearing you down, chest to chest, punch in that knee and stomp on your foot. No, Leon's going to beat you up there, and then he's going to hit you with a slice and elbow. He's going to hit you with a knee, and then he's going to drop down on your hips and take you down. And I mean, actually, I want to go back to I kind of breezed over his kicking game, which is really stupid because he's what I love him is he's so good at mixing up to the body, to the head. Like he'll kick to the body, and then the next one he'll just flick it right to the head. I mean, perfect example is that what he did to Usman, but also like he kicked Kobe in the face once with doing that. Going back to the clinch, he uses his takedowns, upper body takedowns. He's a good wrestler. He can shoot entries on the outside. What he's good is he'll throw a combination and shoot underneath in the takedown. So he like disguises his entries well. He's got great takedown defense. Very hard to take them down. We saw it against Usman in the second fight, particularly. Like he wasn't the best takedown defense. It was good takedown defense early in the first Usman fight. Was much better the second one, and it was much better. I think Kobe took him down late. But that was more of him being tired than just like Kobe blasting through his hips. He's got good ground and pound. He's had the cardio to go 25 minutes. But my one concern is in a fight where, I mean, we've gone over this with Kobe. Like Kobe's this cardio machine, except for like his last 3 fights, he hasn't been, and he's like, I think his prime is past him. He's only 32, and that's the prime ages. But I wonder if his cardio might completely start to falter and he's going to have to change the way he fights, because he gassed out a little bit against Kobe Covington despite the pace not being very high, which is concerning. And that might have been an emotional thing too, being that he really wanted to knock out Kobe. So there might be more factors that I'm not considering. So as far as Belal Muhammad, I mean, we talk about Leon Edwards being big. Belal Muhammad's the opposite. He's undersized for the division. But what Belal Muhammad is, we always talk about these overachievers, like you guys like your Trey Ogdens, like your Julian Aroses, like your Charles Johnson, the guys who get like the best out of their ability. Belal Muhammad, for current MMA, and I'm sure there's other guys that are thinking, but he's like the ultimate overachiever. He kind of, if you want to put a career perspective, obviously not with the title, but he's kind of like a welterweight version of Frankie Edgar, where he's good at everything, but he's not this spectacular athlete. He's undersized. He might be in the wrong weight class. Like he probably could make lightweight, with a little bit of weight cut, but probably could make lightweight. So, but he's just a gamer. He puts himself in the right position. He makes the right, like Frankie Edgar, makes a lot of right decisions, cutting angles and stuff. Now, one thing I said about him is that he's good at everything, but he's not great at one thing. I should have said he is great at one thing, and that he's a builder that gets stronger as the fight goes. And what I mean by that is he's going to pressure. I mean, look, he's going to keep going and pressure, and as the fight goes on, it's going to continue to increase. If Belal Muhammad was a cyclist, it was Tour de France, he's the guy that he's like, everyone else is like, I don't really watch the Tour de France, but I understand how it goes. They bike the entire France, right? But there's like,
it's hundreds of miles. And there's some guys whose style is to be in the lead the whole time. And then there's some guys whose style is to just kind of be there. And then,
but I know like some guys like, they want to, when they go downhill, I don't know, they can go faster or something. I don't know. But some guys like the straightaway, but then there's like the hills guys, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys like, oh shit, today's gonna be tough because we're doing the hills, Bilal Muhammad would be if he was a cyclist. He's the guy like, oh, here's my day. This is where other guys break. This is where I go from 8th place to 1st place because I'm going to press hard in these moments, and that's Bilal Muhammad.
Quick question for you. Who is the greatest kind of builder / weaponized cardio guy in the UFC? Is it Bilal Muhammad or Merab Dvalishvili?
Oh, Merab.
Okay.
Well, no, I don't know. You know what? Oh, that's so fucking close. What I'll say about Merab is his is frantic. While Bilal's more controlled, and then it gets better. Merab just fights at a pace I've never seen before.
Yeah.
But your boy Peyton Talbot he's getting up there. Like he fights at. I mean, he's
finishing people too fast.
There's other guys. Yeah, recently, but like a couple fights. There's other guys that there's other guys that they probably be in the conversation. I don't want to go too off on a rant, but we can go on with these history toys. So, but like I go back to like the Sean Brady way, he just broke Sean Brady with pressure. I mean, and cardio is a weapon for him. I mean, he won't stop working. He's got good footwork. He just feints to set up his shots well. Good busy jab. Good variety in his attacks. He works the body as a big part of his game is going down to the body. He hits harder than he gets credited for. Like he's again like the other, he's not going to knock you out one punch, but he's hurt. I mean, he hurt Gilbert Burns in his last fight. He's got a very underrated kicking game. Great kick, especially to the body. Mean calf kicks. He does get like he's not as defensively sound as Leon Edwards is, and some of that's going to be with just the output. You're putting yourself in the danger more, so that happens. But a lot of it also has to do with lack of head movement. He's all offense, and he's been hurt a lot. He's such a good wrestler, though. A lot of it comes in the clinch. He loves to grind inside and wear on his opponents. He sets up his entries well with striking, very similar to Leon Edwards. Like he disguises it, he'll throw a combination and drop underneath. A guy, he's got, and also he's a great reactionary double. Like if you press him, he can drop down. And we talk about guys not credentialed. I think he was like a high school wrestler. Or something. He was not some great credential guy, but he's one of the best like takedown guys in the UFC right now. Great at timing his opponent's hips and getting the fight to the ground and throwing them on the head. And he's relentless. It's his mindset. He won't stop. Like he doesn't care if you stop him one time because he just wants you to work. He doesn't care if you stop his takedowns. Like Sean Brady was stopping takedowns early. It doesn't matter. He's just getting you to work. What he's very good at is if he takes you down, he's got great top game, credible back takes. He doesn't get enough credit for how good of a grappler. Like his overall like jiu-jitsu game, good back control, good body triangle. He locks the body triangle in. I mean, he out grapples Sean Brady for portions. He Gilbert Burns for portions. I mean, like, and he's got great takedown defense. Like he's very hard to take down. So I wasn't sorry if I keep coughing. I wasn't too excited about this fight until this week, until I started digging into the matchup. And it happens a lot. And then like I get like portions where I dig in, I get excited. Then when we talk about it, I get even more excited. And then I'm like dying for that fight to happen. Like we do this Sunday night and I'm like, shit, I got 6 more days. Like I'm dying, especially the pay-per-view. Like the pay-per-views get me, I get excited for the pay-per-views when I really go from like media member. I don't even afford a media member. I do a breakdown show but I occasionally different people though. But to a fan, when I start watching countdown shows and the embedded, I did the preview show, and I'm like that's when I just fucking love this sport, and that's how I kind of feel with this one. Like when I really dug in, I got excited because both guys are great. I mean, despite being champion with 2 title defenses and on a 12-fight winning streak, like despite having 2 title defenses, being the champion and being on a 12-fight winning streak, I think Leon Edwards is underrated. Despite being the number 1 contender. And on, what'd you say, 10-fight winning streak himself?
10-fight unbeaten streak, yeah.
Yeah. I think Bilal Muhammad is underrated, which makes this matchup so intriguing. I mean, Edwards is like, if I can describe him, he's like, he's sound. He's a very technically sound fighter everywhere, but also gritty. Mm-hmm. Well, Muhammad is like the opposite. Muhammad is gritty everywhere, but also technically sound, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like where you think of Edwards is technical, but he doesn't get enough credit, like how like a dog he can be in situations. And then Muhammad gets all the credit for being a dog in situation, but doesn't get much credit for how technical he can be in situations. I think this is as good a matchup that you can make in the division. I think it's as good a matchup you can make in the UFC right now. Maybe not marketable, but technical wise, I think both guys will have their moments. I expect Edwards to be sharp on the feet, especially early when Edwards is not really, pressing it as much. I expect Edwards to kind of get out to an early start, work the jab, work the kicks, use the footwork, try to stay away from the cage. Don't give, Bilal Muhammad a chance to kind of trap him in that, the warning track next to the cage. I actually think it would be smart for Edwards, and he very well could do this because he's a very intelligent, smart fighter. I think it'd be smart for him to shoot a takedown, put Muhammad on his back, just have him carry a weight for times, or initiate, when Muhammad gets in close to you to clinch, you initiate the clinch and use your size and kind of have Muhammad carry his size. I think that'd be smart, where you're not defensive wrestling, but you're offensive wrestling. So I think that's good at what Edwards going to do early. I think Muhammad's going to try to counter that by playing the long game, where his entire strategy might not necessarily to win the early rounds, but simply to get Edwards to fight at a nonstop pace where he's just nonstop working, defending takedowns, backing up, having a high output. Maybe he's hitting me, but he's throwing a lot of shots. So I think that'll be Muhammad's pace and mindset that will kind of help him, especially the later rounds, the fourth round, the fifth round. That's why I think this fight's going to be super close. I think it's going to be razor close. I think it's going to be those transitional pair. I think it's going to be the littlest things in the rounds that could go either way. I think we might have the different opinions on Twitter. I expect Muhammad to force Edwards onto his back foot for long portions of this fight. I think he might even get a takedown or two. He might even get a back take late. Give me Bilal Muhammad to win 3 out of 5 rounds. I'm going to say the pressure wins the fight. I'm going to say new. Give me Bilal Muhammad, new welterweight champion. Give me Bilal Muhammad by decision.
I absolutely love it. I have nothing to add to your X's and O's breakdown.
All right, so there you go. There was the show, guys. Thanks for subscribe.
You literally covered every technical X and O I wanted to. The only things that I will throw out on top of that are Bilal Muhammad's nickname, of course, is Remember the Name. And it's kind of funny and ironic considering how badly the UFC seems to want to forget him. His nickname, it would be tough to get Joe Buffer and especially Joe Martinez to say it, but his nickname should be Remember How Fucking Good I Am. We're talking about a guy who's on, again, a 10-fight unbeaten streak. His last 4 fights, Gilbert Burns, Sean Brady, Vicente Luque, Stephen Thompson, going back just a little under 3 years. Bilal Muhammad was the underdog in all 4 of those fights. He was a greater than 2-1 underdog in a couple of them. We just still haven't gotten our head around it. He doesn't look like one of the top, or maybe one of the top 20 pound for pound fighters in the sport right now. But he is so damn good. He is so good at leveraging his skill set against his opponent's vulnerabilities, whatever they may happen to be. You already spoke at length about how well-rounded both of these guys are. What makes the difference between a well-rounded fighter who's just a tough out and consistent borderline top 15 guy versus a well-rounded fighter who's on the cusp of a title shot is Muhammad's good at imposing his fight on the other guy. And if all else fails, he can wait to wear him out. I don't get a whole lot of calls perfect, and we didn't get to find it out at the time, but ahead of the first Muhammad Edwards fight, we of course previewed that. I said, I think we're going to find out that we haven't even seen how good Bilal Muhammad can be, because I think we're going to realize that he was built for 5-round fights, and we haven't had a chance to see it in the UFC yet. Obviously, we didn't see it in the first Edwards-Muhammad fight. It was over in, seconds into the second round. But since then, it's kind of played out that way. He's worn out everybody he's fought. And sometimes it's quick like Sean Brady, but other times he's had 5 rounds to do it. I'm with you here, man. You're the guy that will often call a fight to end in a split decision. I don't usually. I think this one ends in a split decision because the general trend of the fight is going to be that the momentum gradually goes the way of Muhammad as Edwards' good cardio is matched up against Muhammad's world-class, unbelievable cardio. But there will be a round or two in the middle that have everybody divided. I bet there will be 2 rounds, maybe the first and 5th, that are pretty obvious for one fighter and for the other. And there'll be ones in the middle that you could score it for either guy. Give me Belal Muhammad to win a split decision here. And my second most likely outcome is that he loses a split decision he should have won because there's just a deafening crowd popping for everything that Edwards does and booing every time Muhammad gets a takedown. That'd be my second most likely outcome. But no, I'm with you here. It is another unanimous upset pick for us. I don't have a ton of confidence in it because these are 2 great fighters and Muhammad has an uphill battle doing this in England. But yeah, I think this is the coming out party for Belal Muhammad, who will continue to show that he is a man built for 5-round fights and new. And that is it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 304, Edwards versus Muhammad 2. I've been Ben. He has been Keith. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our previews, thank you. We hope you've enjoyed it. We do our best to bring you as good a mix of actual in-depth analysis and occasional humorous or historical asides as you'll find anywhere in this business. Please do like, subscribe. Neither of those things cost you a thing. They make us feel good about ourselves, make our bosses happy, and allow us to continue bringing this content to you free of charge. Drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We have plenty of people that let us know when we've missed something or when they think we have gotten a really bad prediction. We're here for it. If you're right, we'll give you all your flowers on the recap. Speaking of which, join us for the recap. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after the main event. Keith takes the captain's chair. We'll talk about all 14 of these fights, talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking with you because the live chat is open that whole time. So we are taking your questions, your comments, your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
To the sea. Make your bed of fairy tales while you're